I'm Amber Mitchell, 29, and yesterday I stared at my phone screen in disbelief. For the fifth consecutive birthday, my parents sent only a text, "Sorry, we've been busy. Happy birthday, sweetie." Meanwhile, my Instagram feed showed my sister Rebecca lounging at a beach resort, sporting a new designer purse, both birthday gifts from our parents. I'd spent years making excuses for them, understanding their choices, swallowing my hurt. But something inside me finally snapped. After a lifetime of being second best, I decided enough was enough. Before I continue, where are you watching from today? Hit the like button and subscribe if you've ever had to set difficult boundaries with family. Let me share how I finally found my voice. Growing up in our suburban Boston home, the pattern was established early. Rebecca, 2 years younger than me, always seemed to receive the lion's share of our parents' attention, affection, and resources. It wasn't that I was neglected in any obvious way that would raise eyebrows. I had everything I needed physically. But emotionally, that was a different story. When I was 8, I won first place in the school science fair with a project on solar energy that I'd worked on for weeks. My parents attended the ceremony, but left immediately after to take Rebecca to her dance recital. They never saw my presentation. "We're so proud of you, Amber," Mom said hurriedly as they rushed out. "But Rebecca really needs us there for support. You understand, right? You're so independent." That became the recurring theme. I was independent, self-sufficient, mature for my age. These weren't just compliments, they were justifications. Rebecca was sensitive, needed more encouragement, was still finding her way. Our personalities were framed in ways that conveniently excused the imbalance of attention. In high school, I maintained a 4.0 GPA, captained the debate team, and secured a partial scholarship to Northeastern University. My acceptance letter was met with a casual "good job, we knew you'd get in" from Dad, followed quickly by concerns about how they'd afford Rebecca's SAT prep courses. At my graduation, they took the obligatory photos, but conversations quickly turned to Rebecca's upcoming junior prom and the dress they needed to shop for. "They love you," my grandmother once whispered to me. "They just worry about Rebecca more. You've always been the easy one." Easy. As if requiring less support was somehow a fair trade for receiving less love. College widened the gap. While I worked part-time jobs to supplement my scholarship, Rebecca changed majors 3 times at a more expensive private school. "Your sister is still finding herself," Mom explained when I questioned why they were covering Rebecca's full tuition while I was working 20 hours a week. "You've always known what you wanted." My graduation from college with honors in marketing marked the first truly undeniable instance of the pattern I'd spent years trying to ignore. My parents attended the ceremony and took me to dinner afterward, a perfectly adequate celebration. 2 weeks later, Rebecca finished her degree, with average grades after 5 years, and received a 2-week trip to Europe to decompress before entering the real world. When I asked why there had been such a disparity in our graduation gifts, Dad looked genuinely confused. "You already had job interviews lined up, Amber. Rebecca needs time to figure things out. Besides, you're not really into traveling." The truth was, I'd never been able to afford traveling, so how would they know what I was into? But I swallowed my hurt and focused on building my career, quickly advancing at a digital marketing firm while Rebecca bounced between entry-level jobs. It was around this time I met Tyler at a work event. Tall, thoughtful, with a quick sense of humor that balanced my more serious nature, he was the first person who truly saw the family dynamic for what it was. After meeting my family at a Thanksgiving dinner where my parents spent most of the time discussing Rebecca's new apartment, which they were subsidizing, Tyler asked quietly on the drive home, "Do they always focus on your sister like that?" "Like what?" I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant. "Like you're an afterthought," he said gently. "You mentioned your promotion 3 times, and they barely acknowledged it." "Rebecca needs more support," I recited automatically. "I've always been more independent." Tyler glanced at me with a look that would become familiar, a mix of tenderness and concern. That's not fair to you, Amber. And I don't think you believe that anymore. He was right. I didn't believe it, but admitting that meant confronting a painful truth. My parents' love felt conditional, measured, and unequally distributed. It was easier to cling to the narrative that I was simply more self-sufficient than to acknowledge that perhaps I wasn't as loved. As my relationship with Tyler deepened, providing me with a mirror reflecting what equal, unconditional support looked like, the contrast with my family dynamic became increasingly stark and increasingly difficult to ignore. The pattern that had been established in childhood would continue into my adult years, building to a breaking point that even my well-practiced emotional defenses couldn't withstand. My 25th birthday marked the beginning of what would become an unmistakable pattern. I had just received a significant promotion at work, and Tyler had planned a small dinner with friends to celebrate both occasions. I invited my parents and Rebecca, secretly hoping my professional milestone might finally earn their enthusiastic attention. The day before my birthday, Mom called. "Honey, we won't be able to make it tomorrow. Your father has a golf tournament, and I promised to help Rebecca shop for her new apartment. We'll catch up soon, okay? We're so proud of you." That evening, I scrolled through Instagram to find Rebecca posting photos of a brand new MacBook Pro, early birthday present from the best parents ever. Can't wait for my actual birthday next month. I put down my phone and tried to ignore the knot in my stomach. Rebecca's 23rd birthday celebration the following month included a weekend at a vineyard with our parents, complete with a private wine tasting and a shopping spree. My promotion and birthday had merited a phone call and a $50 gift card that arrived 3 days late. "Maybe they're just busy right now," I told Tyler as he watched me open the belated card. "Or maybe they think material things don't matter to me." "It's not about the gifts," Tyler said carefully. "It's about the effort and attention. You deserve that too." The second year established the pattern. My 26th birthday coincided with what my mother described as a family emergency, Aunt Linda's minor outpatient procedure that somehow required both my parents' presence, though not Rebecca's. Social media later revealed them having lunch at my sister's favorite restaurant that same day. The explanation when confronted: "We didn't want to worry you with family stress. You have such a demanding job." By my 27th birthday, I had lowered my expectations considerably, which made the excuse that year, financial constraints, somewhat easier to accept. That is, until Rebecca's birthday 3 weeks later featured a weekend trip to Chicago and a new iPhone. When I gently questioned this, my mother seemed genuinely perplexed. Rebecca's been going through such a hard time with her breakup. She needed cheering up. The fourth year, they simply forgot until the day of, sending a last-minute text, "Happy birthday. Sorry it slipped our minds with everything going on. Love you." That everything was never specified and no belated celebration was offered. Each disappointment chipped away at my well-constructed rationalizations. After the fourth birthday, I finally attempted to have a real conversation about the pattern I couldn't ignore. "Mom," I said during a rare phone call where I had her full attention, "I've noticed that my birthdays and achievements seem to be treated differently than Rebecca's. It makes me feel less important." The silence on the line stretched for several seconds before her response came, defensive and dismissive. "Amber, you've always been so independent. Rebecca needs more encouragement. You're successful and stable. You don't need us fussing over you like she does." "But I still want to be celebrated," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "I still want to feel special to you both." "You're being too sensitive," she replied. "We love you both the same. We just show it differently based on what you each need." That conversation repeated with variations over the following months. My father was even more direct. "You're an adult with a great job. What do you want from us?" Rebecca is still finding her footing. At 27, Rebecca had found her footing through 3 different careers, each one financed by our parents' generosity. Meanwhile, I had built my success largely on my own, a fact that was now being used against me as justification for their emotional and financial withdrawal. Tyler witnessed my slow emotional retreat from my family. The fewer calls, the shortened visits, the careful avoidance of personal topics. They're not going to change if you don't make them face this, he said one night after I declined yet another family dinner that would inevitably revolve around Rebecca. They're still my family, I answered, though the words felt hollow. What am I supposed to do? Cut them off because they don't throw me big birthday parties? This isn't about birthday parties, Tyler said, taking my hand. This is about you being treated as less valuable, less worthy of celebration and support. You matter, Amber. Your feelings matter. I knew he was right, but confrontation had never been my strong suit, especially with my parents. The pattern was painful but familiar. Rocking the boat felt more frightening than continuing to quietly absorb the hurt. So I maintained surface-level contact while emotionally withdrawing, hoping something would eventually change without my having to force the issue. As my 29th birthday approached, I had learned to expect nothing more than a text message. But deep down, a stubborn, childish hope persisted. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year, they would see me. The week before my 29th birthday, I found myself engaged in a familiar internal dialogue, the hopeful part of me wondering if this year might be different, while the realistic part prepared for another disappointment. I had deliberately scheduled a day off work, something I rarely did, just in case my parents might suggest a lunch or even a phone call longer than 5 minutes. 3 days before my birthday, Mom called. My heart lifted momentarily. Amber, honey, I just wanted to check what your schedule looks like next month. Dad and I are thinking of having a little family gathering. Oh, I said, the momentary hope deflating. I'm pretty flexible. What's the occasion? Nothing special. Just thought it would be nice to get everyone together. By the way, your birthday is this Friday, isn't it? Dad and I have been so swamped with the house renovations. We'll try to give you a call. Try. As if wishing their daughter happy birthday required scheduling and effort. Actually, I took the day off, I said, hearing the hint of plea in my voice and hating it. I'm free all day if you wanted to grab lunch or something. Oh, that's nice, honey. I'll have to check with your father, but we've got the contractor coming that day, I think. I'll text you, okay? They didn't text to follow up about lunch. Instead, at 4:37 p.m. on my birthday, as I was getting ready for the dinner Tyler had organized with friends, my phone pinged with a message from my father. Happy birthday, Amber. Sorry we've been busy with the house and couldn't call today. Hope you're having a good one. Love, Dad and Mom. I stared at the message, noting how it was clearly from my father. My mother would have used emojis, and how they hadn't even called, just sent a text. I placed my phone face down on the dresser and continued applying my makeup, refusing to let the tears forming ruin my mascara. You okay? Tyler asked, watching me from the doorway. Fine, I said automatically. Just the usual birthday text. At least they remembered. Tyler didn't push, but I felt his eyes on me as I finished getting ready, his concern a tangible thing in the room. The dinner with friends was lovely. A private room at my favorite restaurant, thoughtful gifts, genuine warmth and celebration. For a few hours, I forgot about my parents' absence, allowing myself to be surrounded by people who chose to be there, who made me feel valued. It was during dessert that my phone buzzed repeatedly with notifications. Curious, I glanced down to see Instagram alerts. I had been tagged in photos. Rebecca had posted a series of pictures from a beach resort in Florida, the azure water providing a stunning backdrop for selfies of her and our parents, all smiles and laughter. The caption read, "Surprise early birthday getaway with the best parents ever. Plus they spoiled me with this gorgeous Michael Kors bag. Nothing but the best for their baby girl. Love you both so much. Hashtag blessed, hashtag birthday girl, hashtag family first." My hands trembled as I clicked through the photos, my parents flanking Rebecca at sunset dinners, poolside lounging, and shopping excursions. The house renovations that had kept them too busy to even call me apparently hadn't prevented a 5-day beach vacation. And Rebecca's birthday was still 3 weeks away. Amber? Tyler's voice seemed to come from far away. What's wrong? I wordlessly handed him my phone. Around the table, my friends' chatter died down as they registered the change in atmosphere. Tyler's expression darkened as he scrolled through the photos. They told me they were busy with house renovations, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the emotion churning inside me. Too busy to call. Too busy for lunch. But not too busy for this. A silence fell over the table. My closest friend Julia reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, Amber. Don't be, I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle. This is nothing new. But it was new, or at least, the public evidence of it was new. In the past, I could pretend to myself and others that perhaps I was exaggerating the disparity, that my perception was skewed by sensitivity or insecurity. Now, the contrast was displayed for everyone to see, timestamped and hashtagged. You don't have to do this, Tyler said quietly. We can go home if you want. I looked around at the concerned faces of my friends, people who had shown up for me, who celebrated me without conditions or comparisons. No, I said firmly. I'm exactly where I want to be, with exactly the people I want to be with. We finished the evening, but the photos had cast a shadow I couldn't quite shake. Later that night, alone with Tyler in our apartment, I finally allowed the tears to come. What's wrong with me? I asked between sobs. Why am I never enough for them? Tyler held me, his presence steady and sure. Nothing is wrong with you. This is about them, not you. But why? What did I do to deserve being treated like an afterthought? You didn't do anything, he said firmly. Some parents they play favorites. They don't see how it hurts because they don't want to see. I pulled away, wiping my eyes. Do you know what the worst part is? Until tonight, I still had this tiny hope that maybe I was overreacting, that maybe they really were just busy or thought I didn't need them. But this, I gestured toward my phone. This makes it so obvious. They didn't even try to hide it. Maybe that's actually good, Tyler suggested cautiously. Now you can stop making excuses for them. Now you can decide what you want to do about it. I nodded slowly, a heaviness settling in my chest along with a strange, unexpected sense of clarity. For years I had twisted myself into knots trying to understand, to justify, to accept their behavior. The mental gymnastics had been exhausting. You're right, I said finally. No more excuses. No more pretending this is normal or okay. What I didn't know then was that acknowledging the truth would be only the first step in a painful journey and that the worst was yet to come. 3 days after my birthday, after spending the weekend processing the beach vacation photos and gathering my courage, I called my mother. My hands trembled as I held the phone, but I was determined to address the situation directly. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. Amber? Is everything okay? The fact that she assumed I was calling with a problem rather than just a talk was telling in itself. I took a deep breath. Mom, I saw the photos of you, Dad, and Rebecca at the beach resort. A pause. Oh, yes. It was a lovely little getaway. Rebecca's been working so hard lately, we thought she deserved a break before her birthday. The casual dismissal of what this represented made my chest tighten. Mom, you told me you were too busy with house renovations to see me on my birthday. Too busy to even call. But you weren't too busy for a 5-day vacation with Rebecca. Another pause, longer this time. Amber, the trip was planned months ago. The contractor's scheduling was last minute. I don't understand why you're upset. I'm upset because this is a pattern, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. For the past 5 years, my birthdays have been met with texts and excuses, while Rebecca gets vacations and expensive gifts. It makes me feel like I'm less important to you and Dad. That's ridiculous, she replied, her tone shifting from confusion to defensiveness. We do everything equally for both of you girls. You're being far too sensitive about this. Equally. I repeated. Mom, when was the last time you took me on a vacation? Or bought me a designer purse? When was the last time you made any effort to celebrate me the way you celebrate Rebecca? You're a grown woman with a successful career, Amber. You don't need us to coddle you like Rebecca does. Besides, you never seemed interested in those kinds of things. How would you know what I'm interested in? I asked, hurt bleeding into my voice. You never ask. And this isn't about material things. It's about showing that you care about me as much as you care about her. Of course we care about you, she exclaimed. I can't believe you're trying to turn this into some sort of competition with your sister. We've always been there for both of you. That's not true, Mom, and you know it. You've always prioritized Rebecca. Always. I heard my father's voice in the background, asking what was wrong. Mom covered the phone, but I could still hear her muffled explanation. Amber's upset about Rebecca's birthday trip. Dad came on the line. Amber, what's this about? Your mother's upset. The fact that he immediately focused on Mom's feelings rather than mine spoke volumes. I'm upset too, Dad. I'm upset that you both consistently show Rebecca that she matters more to you than I do. That's nonsense, he said firmly. You're too successful to need anything from us. You've got your fancy job and your boyfriend. Rebecca still needs our support. I still need you too, I said, my voice breaking slightly. Not financially, but emotionally. I need to feel like I matter to you both. Of course you matter, he exclaimed, sounding genuinely bewildered. But you can't expect us to treat you the same when you're in completely different situations. Rebecca needs more from us right now. She's always needed more, I replied. For 29 years, she's always been the priority. Now you're just being dramatic, he said dismissively. We're not having this conversation if you're going to be irrational. The call ended shortly after with nothing resolved and my parents both frustrated with me for creating drama. I sat in stunned silence, replaying the conversation. They genuinely couldn't see the pattern that was so glaringly obvious to me. That evening, my phone lit up with a text from Rebecca. Thanks for ruining Mom's day with your jealousy issues. Not everything is about you, you know. I didn't respond, but the irony wasn't lost on me. In Rebecca's world, everything had always been about her, and our parents had fostered that belief. The confrontation triggered a family-wide reaction. At a cousin's wedding the following month, the tension was palpable. Relatives who had witnessed the dynamic for years, but never commented now observed with new awareness as my parents doted on Rebecca while maintaining a cool distance from me. Your dress is beautiful, Rebecca. You look stunning. Mom gushed, adjusting my sister's hair for the 5th time. When I approached in my carefully selected outfit, she merely nodded. You look nice too, Amber. My Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, caught my eye across the table during dinner. Later, she found me alone by the bar. I've seen it for years, she said quietly. I've tried to talk to your mother about it, but she doesn't see it. Thank you for saying that, I replied, unexpected tears stinging my eyes. Sometimes I feel like I'm crazy for noticing. You're not crazy, she assured me. But I don't think they'll ever change, honey. Some parents just pick a favorite. It's not fair, but it's how they are. The wedding became a turning point when Rebecca, slightly drunk on champagne, confronted me in the bathroom. Why are you trying to make Mom and Dad feel bad? She demanded. You're just jealous of my relationship with them. I'm not jealous of your relationship, I replied carefully. I'm hurt that they don't seem to have room for a relationship with me too. Rebecca rolled her eyes. You're always so dramatic. They love you fine. You just want everything I have. I don't want what you have, I said. I just want to be treated with the same love and consideration. Well, maybe if you weren't so cold and judgmental all the time, they'd want to spend more time with you, she snapped. You're always been the difficult one. I stared at her, seeing for the first time how the family narrative had shaped her perception too. In her world, I was the aloof, judging older sister who had everything and still wanted more. The reality, that I had been systematically sidelined while she was elevated, was invisible to her. The final straw came during Thanksgiving when my parents announced they would be helping Rebecca with a down payment on a condo. When Tyler politely inquired if they had offered similar help when we purchased our apartment the previous year, the table fell silent. Amber never asked for help, Dad said stiffly. She's always been independent. We didn't ask because we knew what the answer would be, Tyler replied, his usual diplomacy fraying. The same answer it's always been for Amber. And what's that supposed to mean? Mom demanded. It means, I interjected, finally finding my voice, that you've always had different rules for Rebecca and me. Different expectations. Different levels of support. Here we go again, Rebecca sighed dramatically. Poor Amber, always the victim. I'm not playing the victim, I said, keeping my voice level despite the hurt and anger coursing through me. I'm stating facts. Facts that everyone in this family has chosen to ignore for years. Well, I think you're being ungrateful, Mom said. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me that equals what you've done for Rebecca? I asked quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. I think you should just get over it, Dad finally said. This jealousy isn't healthy, Amber. In that moment, looking at their faces, my father's dismissal, my mother's defensive anger, Rebecca's smug certainty, I realized that Aunt Linda was right. They would never change because they could not admit there was anything to change. The dynamic was too entrenched, too comfortable for them. And I had a decision to make. The drive home from Thanksgiving dinner was silent. Tyler kept glancing at me, clearly concerned, but respecting my need to process. When we finally arrived at our apartment, I sat on the edge of our bed and stared at the wall. I can't do this anymore, I whispered. Tyler sat beside me, our shoulders touching. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that nothing will ever change. They don't see it. They don't want to see it. I looked at him, tears welling in my eyes. And I can't keep pretending it doesn't hurt. I can't keep showing up to be dismissed and gaslit and made to feel like I'm crazy for wanting to be treated with equal consideration. So what do you want to do? He asked gently. I think I need some distance, I said, the words both frightening and liberating. I need to step back from them until I can figure out how to have a relationship that doesn't damage my self-worth every time I interact with them. The next day, I made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Melanie Rivera was warm but direct, listening carefully as I detailed the family dynamic. What you're describing sounds like a classic golden child/scapegoat dynamic, she explained after I'd shared my history. It's a form of emotional neglect when it comes to your relationship with your parents. Your feelings and needs have been consistently minimized while your sisters have been prioritized. But why? I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. What did I do to deserve this? Nothing, she said firmly. This isn't about anything you did or didn't do. Family dynamics like this often develop early and become self-reinforcing. The more independent and self-sufficient you became in response to getting less attention, the more they used those traits to justify giving you less. Over the next few weeks, Dr. Rivera helped me understand that my pain was valid, my observations accurate, and my need for boundaries healthy. With her guidance, I crafted a letter to my parents, something I could reference during the difficult conversation I knew I needed to have. In early January, I called them and asked if we could meet in person. They agreed, sounding wary. When I arrived at their house, they were both sitting stiffly in the living room. My mother's face was already set in defensive lines. Before you say anything, I began, my hands trembling slightly as I held my notes. I want you to know that I love you both. What I'm about to say comes from that love and from a need to protect myself. I took a deep breath and continued. For as long as I can remember, I felt like the less important child in this family. My achievements have been minimized, my needs deprioritized, and my feelings dismissed, all while Rebecca has received consistent emotional and financial support, celebration, and attention. My father started to interrupt, but I held up my hand. Please let me finish. I've tried to talk to you both about this multiple times, but you've either denied it or justified it by saying Rebecca needs more or that I'm independent. The truth is, I've had to be independent because I learned early that I couldn't count on you the way Rebecca could. My mother's face had grown pale. That's not true, Amber. We've always loved you both equally. Love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's actions. It's showing up. It's celebration and support and attention. And by those measures, your love has never been equal. I swallowed hard. I'm not saying this to hurt you or to ask you to love Rebecca less. I'm saying this because I can't pretend anymore that it doesn't hurt me. So what are you saying? My father asked, his voice tight. What do you want from us? I need some distance, I said. I need time to heal from this pattern and to figure out what kind of relationship I can have with you that doesn't leave me feeling diminished. I won't be coming to family gatherings for a while. I won't be calling or visiting regularly. The shock on their faces was quickly replaced by indignation. You're cutting us off because we didn't throw you a big enough birthday party? My father demanded. No, I replied calmly, though my heart was racing. I'm setting a boundary because decades of unequal treatment have damaged my sense of self-worth and my trust in you both. The birthday was just the most recent example. This is ridiculous, my mother said, tears in her eyes. You're punishing us because you're jealous of your sister. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. The conversation deteriorated from there. My parents cycled through denial, anger, guilt-tripping, and finally emotional manipulation. My mother crying that I was breaking her heart, my father accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. I left feeling shaky but resolved. The hardest part was yet to come, actually maintaining the boundary I'd set. The first few weeks were a barrage of texts and calls, not just from my parents but from extended family members who had been enlisted to talk sense into me. My Aunt Meredith called to tell me I was tearing the family apart. My Uncle Steve suggested I needed psychological help for my jealousy issues. Even my grandmother, who had once acknowledged the disparity, now urged me to forgive and forget for the sake of family harmony. Rebecca launched what Tyler called her victim campaign on social media, vague posts about toxic people and family betrayal that painted her as the wounded party. Mutual family friends reached out, confused by the narrative she was spinning. Through it all, I maintained minimal contact with my parents, brief, factual responses to texts, but no calls or visits. Dr. Rivera helped me craft responses that were firm but not cruel. I understand you're upset, but I need this boundary right now. I'm not discussing this further. I love you, but my decision stands. The most difficult test came when my mother ended up in the hospital with pneumonia in March. I visited, of course, but maintained emotional boundaries, resisting her tearful pleas that life is too short for estrangement. When she was discharged, I helped arrange her home care but didn't move back into the caretaker role that would have been expected before. Easter came and went, the first holiday I'd ever missed with my family. I spent it instead with Tyler's family and a few close friends, creating new traditions that didn't leave me feeling like an afterthought. The day was bittersweet, tinged with grief for what I wished could be, but also filled with genuine warmth and celebration. By June, 6 months into my limited contact, the constant pressure from my family had eased somewhat. My parents had shifted from angry demands to tentative, surface-level communication that carefully avoided any mention of the elephant in the room. They sent occasional texts checking in but never acknowledged the issues I'd raised. Rebecca remained cold and distant, still portraying herself as the victim of my irrational jealousy. But without my presence as the family scapegoat, I wondered if the dynamic between her and our parents had shifted at all. Meanwhile, I poured my energy into building a life that affirmed my worth. I accepted a promotion at work that I might have previously downplayed around my family to avoid overshadowing Rebecca. Tyler and I began discussing marriage more seriously, planning a wedding that would reflect our values rather than family expectations. Are you going to invite them? Tyler asked one evening as we browsed potential venues online. I sighed, considering the question I'd been avoiding. I don't know yet. Part of me wants to believe that something this significant might finally make them see me. But another part knows that's magical thinking. Whatever you decide, I'm with you, he assured me. But don't invite them because you're hoping they'll suddenly change. Invite them only if you can accept them as they are. His wisdom struck me deeply. For so long, I'd been caught in a cycle of hope and disappointment, hoping that the next achievement, the next milestone, the next conversation would finally make my parents see me and treat me with the same enthusiasm they showed Rebecca. But that hope had kept me tethered to a painful pattern. Maybe true freedom wasn't about changing them, but about changing my expectations and building a life where my worth wasn't dependent on their validation. As summer turned to fall, I settled into a new rhythm with my family, brief, cordial interactions that remained firmly on the surface. My parents made occasional attempts to draw me back into the old dynamic, with my mother sending texts like "Rebecca misses you" or "The family doesn't feel complete without you," but I maintained my boundaries. What surprised me most was how different I felt without the constant cycle of hope and disappointment that had characterized my relationship with them. There was grief, certainly, mourning the parents I wished I had, the relationship I'd never experienced. But there was also a new sense of peace. It's like I've been holding my breath for years, I told Dr. Rivera during one of our sessions. Always bracing for the next reminder that I'm second best. Now I can just breathe. She nodded. That's what happens when we stop trying to earn love from people who aren't capable of giving it the way we need. We free up all that energy for other things. And I did have energy for other things. My career flourished as I took on challenging projects without the voice in my head questioning if I deserved success. My relationship with Tyler deepened as I stopped bringing the insecurity and people-pleasing tendencies from my family dynamic into our partnership. I also began building what Tyler called my chosen family, strengthening connections with friends who celebrated my successes without resentment, who showed up consistently, who made me feel seen and valued. Julia, my friend who had squeezed my hand at that fateful birthday dinner, became an even more important presence in my life. I always saw how you dimmed your light around your family, she told me over coffee one day. It's beautiful to see you shining now. Not everything was easy, of course. The first holiday season away from my family was particularly difficult. Thanksgiving at Tyler's parents' home was warm and inclusive, but I still felt the absence of my own family acutely. Christmas brought a small, carefully neutral gift from my parents with a card that made no mention of our estrangement. Rebecca continued her campaign on social media, posting throwback family photos with captions like, "Missing the way things used to be before some people chose ego over family." I muted her accounts for my own peace of mind. In February, nearly a year after setting my boundary, Tyler proposed during a weekend trip to Vermont. As we celebrated with champagne in our snowy cabin, I felt a familiar twinge of sadness knowing that sharing this news with my family wouldn't bring the unbridled joy it should. Should I even tell them? I wondered aloud, staring at my beautiful engagement ring. That's entirely up to you, Tyler said. But remember, you're not responsible for their reaction. You get to celebrate this moment regardless of how they respond. I texted my parents the news the next day, attaching a photo of the ring. My mother responded quickly, "Congratulations. That's wonderful news. We should all get together to celebrate soon." The suggestion of getting together without any acknowledgement of our estrangement was typical, acting as if nothing had happened, as if we could simply resume normal relations without addressing the underlying issues. I replied politely but non-committally and turned my attention to planning a wedding that would reflect our values rather than conform to family expectations. We chose a small, intimate ceremony with only our closest friends and family, people who had consistently shown up for us both. The question of whether to invite my parents and Rebecca loomed large. After much discussion with Tyler and Dr. Rivera, I decided to extend an invitation with clear boundaries. They were welcome to attend as guests, but the day would proceed on our terms, without the traditional father-daughter dance or family speeches that might reopen old wounds. Meanwhile, my professional life continued to flourish. I received another promotion, becoming the youngest senior director in my company's history. The financial security this provided meant Tyler, and I could plan our wedding without needing parental contributions, a freedom that allowed us to make decisions based solely on our preferences rather than obligations. As I approached my 30th birthday, the one-year mark since the beach vacation photos that had finally forced me to confront the family dynamic, I reflected on how much had changed. The previous year's hurt and rage had mellowed into something more complex, a mixture of sadness for what couldn't be, gratitude for what I'd built instead, and pride in my growth. Do you regret it? Tyler asked one evening as we discussed my upcoming birthday. Setting that boundary? I considered the question carefully. No, I said finally. It's been painful, and there are days I miss the illusion of family I had before. But I don't regret choosing my self-respect. I don't regret refusing to participate in a dynamic that made me feel less than. He nodded, squeezing my hand. I'm proud of you. Not everyone has the courage to draw that line. As my 30th birthday approached, I decided to reclaim the day that had for too long been a source of disappointment. I planned a weekend trip to a nearby lake with Tyler and our closest friends, people who celebrated me without condition or comparison, who made me feel valued just for being myself. The week before my birthday, I received a text from my mother. Your father and I were thinking of stopping by for your birthday this year. Let us know if that works for you. After a year of surface-level communication with no acknowledgement of the issues I'd raised, this casual suggestion that they could simply stop by felt like another dismissal of my boundaries. They wanted access without accountability, connection without change. With Dr. Rivera's guidance, I crafted a response that was firm but not cruel. Thank you for thinking of me, but I have plans for my birthday weekend. I'm still processing a lot about our relationship, and I'm not ready for an in-person visit yet. I hope you understand. My mother's reply was brief and cool. We're trying, Amber. I don't know what more you want from us. The truth was, I didn't want anything from them anymore, at least, not in the desperate, hungry way I once had. I'd stopped looking to them for validation or celebration. I'd built those things for myself, with people who freely gave what my parents couldn't or wouldn't provide. As I packed for my birthday weekend, I realized that was perhaps the greatest gift of this difficult year, the freedom from needing them to see me, to affirm me, to choose me. I had finally, truly chosen myself. My 30th birthday dawned clear and beautiful at the lakeside cabin Tyler had rented. I woke to the sound of gentle waves and birdsong, a world away from the anxiety that had surrounded my birthdays for years. Our friends arrived throughout the morning, bearing homemade food, thoughtful gifts, and genuine excitement to celebrate with me. Julia had organized a sunset boat tour, complete with champagne and my favorite music. As we glided across the water, watching the sky turn spectacular shades of orange and pink, I felt a profound sense of peace. Happy birthday, Amber, Tyler said, raising his glass. To 30 years of becoming the incredible woman you are, and to all the years ahead of continuing to shine. Our friends joined the toast, their faces warm with authentic affection. In that moment, surrounded by chosen family, I understood that this was what celebration should feel like, unforced, uncomplicated by comparison or condition, simply joy in my existence. My phone had remained mostly silent throughout the day, with the exception of a brief text from my parents. Happy 30th birthday, Amber. Love, Mom and Dad. No mention of the beach vacation they were taking with Rebecca for her birthday the following month, which I'd seen referenced on social media. No acknowledgement of our estrangement. Just a placeholder greeting that fulfilled the minimum obligation. In the past, that text would have devastated me. Today, I could receive it with a calm acknowledgement. This was who they were capable of being, and it was no longer my responsibility to make them see or do more. Over the following months, I maintained limited, structured contact with my parents. We spoke occasionally on the phone, exchanged holiday greetings, and kept conversations focused on neutral topics. The distance I'd established had actually made these interactions less painful, as I no longer approached them with hope or expectation. There were signs that my boundary had created some ripples in the family system. My mother occasionally made small efforts that would have been unthinkable before, sending articles related to my work, asking questions about my life rather than immediately turning the conversation to Rebecca. My father remained more distant but less dismissive when we did speak. Rebecca, however, continued to view my boundary as a personal attack. She made little effort to understand my perspective, comfortable in her role as the family favorite. Our relationship remained strained, limited to brief, civil exchanges at the few family functions I attended. As our wedding approached in the spring, Tyler and I finalized our plans without family financial support or interference. We chose a beautiful outdoor venue, wrote our own vows, and kept the guest list intimate, only people who had demonstrated consistent love and support for us both. My parents accepted the invitation to attend as guests, though my mother expressed hurt at not being more involved in the planning. "I always imagined helping my daughters with their weddings," she said during one phone call. "I know," I replied gently, "but this approach feels right for us." The wedding day itself was everything we'd hoped for, authentic, joyful, and surrounded by genuine well-wishers. My parents attended and behaved appropriately, though I could sense their discomfort at the unfamiliar dynamic where they weren't central figures. Rebecca came with her new boyfriend, maintained a polite distance, and left early. During the reception, my Aunt Linda found a moment to speak with me privately. "You look happy," she said, studying my face. "Really happy, not just putting on a brave face like you used to." "I am happy," I confirmed. "It took some hard choices to get here, but I'm at peace with them." She nodded. "Your parents may never fully understand what happened or their role in it. Some people just can't see themselves clearly." "I know," I said. "I've stopped waiting for them to see or understand." That's been the most freeing part. In the year since setting my boundary, I'd learned invaluable lessons about self-worth, family dynamics, and the courage required to break unhealthy patterns. I discovered that love shouldn't require diminishing yourself, that blood ties don't automatically equal healthy relationships, and that it's possible to honor your parents without sacrificing your dignity. Most importantly, I'd learned that waiting for others to validate your worth is a losing proposition. Worth must come from within first, reinforced by relationships with people who naturally see and celebrate you. As Tyler and I settled into married life, we discussed how we would approach family planning and parenting, both aware of the patterns we didn't want to repeat. "If we have multiple children," I told him one evening, "I want to be so conscious of treating them as individuals without creating a hierarchy of value. No golden child, no scapegoat, just different people with different needs, all equally worthy of celebration. We'll break the cycle," he promised. Together. And that, perhaps, was the greatest resolution I could have hoped for. Not that my parents would suddenly transform or that Rebecca would develop self-awareness, but that I could take the painful lessons from my childhood and use them to create something better for the future. The cycle of favoritism and emotional neglect that had shaped me wouldn't continue into the next generation. My story doesn't have a perfect Hollywood ending where my parents had a dramatic realization and changed completely. Real life rarely works that way. But it does have a true resolution in the peace I've found, the boundaries I've maintained, and the life I've built that affirms rather than diminishes my worth. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own family, know that you're not alone and you're not crazy for noticing. Your feelings are valid. Your needs matter. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and ultimately for your family, is to stand firm in your truth and require that relationships be mutual in their care and respect. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? What helped you find the courage to do so? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be celebrated too. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you are worthy of love that doesn't hurt.
I'm Audrey Parker, 28, and I just buried my father 4 days ago. For 6 years, I've poured my heart into our family real estate business, learning every detail under Dad's patient guidance. Today, I walked into our office to find my sister-in-law, Diane, sitting at my father's desk telling our employees she's taking over. Her cold eyes locked with mine as she said those crushing words, "You need to leave. You're in the way now." I felt my world collapse for the second time this week. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you thought was family. I promise this story will show you how to rise above even the most painful betrayals. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds in my apartment as I stared blankly at the ceiling. Sleep had been a stranger since Dad's heart attack just 9 days ago. Harold Parker had been my hero, my mentor, and my best friend. At 59, he was supposed to have decades of life ahead of him. We had plans, dreams for the future of Sunridge Properties, the real estate company he'd built from nothing 25 years ago. I dragged myself out of bed and opened my closet, pulling out the navy blue blazer Dad had given me when I first joined the company 6 years ago after graduating with my business degree. "Every good real estate agent needs a power blazer," he'd said with that warm smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. The memory made my chest ache. Sunridge Properties wasn't just any real estate company. In a market dominated by corporate giants, we'd maintained a reputation for personalized service and integrity. Our 35 employees weren't just staff, they were an extension of our family. Dad had built the business on relationships, not just transactions. I remember my first day how nervous I'd been despite growing up around the business. Dad didn't give me special treatment. I started at the bottom, learning every aspect from administrative tasks to closing deals. "You can't lead what you don't understand," he'd tell me. By my 3rd year, I was managing our residential division. By year 5, Dad had made me director of operations, grooming me to eventually take his place. My brother Jason had chosen a different path. 3 years older than me at 31, he'd always been drawn to medicine. Now a successful pediatrician, he respected the family business but had no interest in running it. "That's your and Dad's thing," he'd say. "I've got enough stress with sick kids." Jason had married Diane Collins 4 years ago. Tall, immaculately styled with an MBA from Wharton, Diane had always struck me as intensely ambitious. She worked as a management consultant, parachuting into struggling companies to optimize operations, a euphemism I'd learned for mass layoffs and restructuring. I'd always sensed a competitive edge when she spoke to me, but I'd chalked it up to professional rivalry and tried to maintain a cordial relationship for Jason's sake. It wasn't until about 8 months ago that Diane started showing an interest in Sunridge. She began asking detailed questions about our business model at family dinners, inquiring about our growth strategy and profit margins. Dad, always generous with his knowledge, happily discussed the business with her. "Your sister-in-law has quite the business mind," Dad had commented after one Sunday dinner. Jason found himself a sharp one. I'd nodded, but something in Diane's intense questioning had unsettled me. It wasn't curiosity, it was assessment. Those memories flooded back as I drove to the office for the first time since the funeral. Dad and I would usually carpool, stopping for coffee at Franklin's, the local cafe where he knew every employee by name. Today I went through the drive-thru alone. The heart attack had been sudden. One minute Dad was showing a luxury property to clients, the next he was on the floor. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. The doctors said it was quick. Small comfort when your world has shattered. The funeral had been a blur of faces and condolences. I remembered Diane standing next to Jason, her black dress impeccably tailored, her hand gripping his arm as she accepted condolences, as though she, not I, had been the closest to Dad. "We're devastated," she'd told people. Harold was like a father to me. 3 days of bereavement leave had done little to heal the raw wound of grief. but I knew Dad would want the business to continue. He'd built something that supported dozens of families, including mine. As I pulled into my parking space at Sunridge Properties, I took a deep breath. "I'll make you proud, Dad," I whispered, not knowing how soon that promise would be tested. The first sign that something was wrong came when I entered the building. Angela, our receptionist for the past 8 years, gave me a strange look as I approached her desk. "Audrey, I didn't expect to see you today," she said, her usual cheerful greeting replaced by obvious discomfort. "I couldn't stay away any longer," I replied, forcing a small smile. "Too quiet at home with just my thoughts. How's everyone holding up?" Before Angela could answer, Thomas Green, our CFO and one of Dad's oldest friends, emerged from the hallway. His face registered surprise, then what looked distinctly like concern. "Audrey, can I have a word?" His voice was low, urgent. "Sure, Thomas. Let me just put my things in my office first." "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about." A chill ran down my spine. As we walked toward the executive wing, I noticed unusual activity. People carrying boxes, unfamiliar faces in suits consulting clipboards. We rounded the corner to Dad's office. My office now, I had assumed. And I stopped cold. Through the glass walls, I could see Diane standing in the center of the room directing workers who were removing Dad's paintings from the walls. His beloved vintage sailing maps were already gone, replaced by modern abstract art. His desk, the solid oak desk where he'd taught me to review contracts, had been pushed to the side waiting to be removed. Without thinking, I pushed open the door. "What's going on here?" Diane turned, her surprise quickly masked by a composed smile. She wore a crisp white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Audrey, I didn't expect you back so soon." "Clearly," I said, staring at the workers dismantling my father's legacy piece by piece. "What are you doing in Dad's office?" Diane's smile tightened. "I'm making necessary changes. This office needs to reflect its new occupant." "New occupant?" The words felt like ice in my veins. "Yes, as the new CEO of Sunridge Properties, I need a workspace that promotes efficiency and forward thinking." The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "New CEO, Diane? What are you talking about? Dad was grooming me to take over. I've been running operations for years." Diane's laugh was light dismissive. "Audrey, following your father's instructions isn't the same as having real business acumen. Sunridge needs experienced leadership to survive in today's market. As the only real business person in the family, I'm stepping up." "The only real business person?" I felt heat rising to my face. "I have a business degree. I've worked here for 6 years. Our quarterly profits are up 15% under my management." "Under your father's management," Diane corrected. "You were just implementing his vision. Now it's time for a new vision." She turned to one of the workers. "That desk needs to go. I've ordered a glass one to replace it." Thomas cleared his throat beside me. "Diane, perhaps we should discuss this transition more thoroughly." Harold had specific intentions for succession, which weren't formalized. Diane cut in smoothly. "I've already spoken with legal. Without explicit documentation, leadership falls to qualified family management." She gave me a pointed look. "Jason and I have discussed this at length. He agrees I'm the right person to preserve his father's legacy." My brother's name hit like a slap. "Jason agreed to this, without talking to me. He understands business needs to be separated from emotion. Speaking of which..." Diane glanced at her watch. "I'm calling a company meeting in 10 minutes to introduce myself as CEO. I suggest you take more time to process your grief before returning to work. Your emotional state could be disruptive." I stood frozen as she brushed past me. Through the glass walls, I could see employees gathering their faces, confused, concerned. Cassandra Wilson, our top agent who'd been with Dad since the beginning, caught my eye with a look of genuine alarm. "Thomas, what's happening?" I whispered. The older man placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. I don't know, Audrey. This is the first I'm hearing about Diane taking over. Your father never mentioned this to me. Because he didn't plan it, I said, my shock giving way to anger. I need to talk to Jason. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called my brother. The call went straight to voicemail. I texted, "Why is Diane claiming she's CEO of Sunridge? Call me now." Through the glass, I could see Diane standing confidently before the gathered employees. Even without hearing her words, I could read the surprise and confusion on their faces. Some looked back toward Dad's office, spotting me. A few nodded in solidarity, but others quickly averted their eyes. As the impromptu meeting dispersed, Cassandra made her way to me, her normally composed features tight with concern. "Audrey, what's going on? Diane just told everyone she's taking over as CEO effective immediately." "Apparently my brother thinks that's a good idea," I said, still staring at my silent phone. That's not right," Cassandra said firmly. "Everyone knows Harold was preparing you to take over. You've earned that position." Before I could respond, Diane reappeared at the door. "Audrey, I think it's best if you take the rest of the week off. Your office is being repurposed as our new digital marketing center. We'll figure out a suitable role for you once you're in a better emotional state." I felt my face flush with anger and humiliation. A suitable role? This is my family's company. "It's the Parker family company," Diane corrected smoothly. "And as Jason's wife, I am family. Now please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." As she walked away, I stood in my father's half-dismantled office, surrounded by the pieces of his legacy being carelessly boxed up and removed. I moved to his desk and pulled open the drawer where he kept important documents, only to find it empty. "She had I change all the passwords this morning," Thomas said quietly, "and she's already been through the files." The betrayal cut deep, made worse by my brother's apparent complicity. As I left the building that day, the weight of loss doubled on my shoulders. First my father, and now the company we'd built together. 1 week after my father's funeral, Sunridge Properties had transformed into a place I barely recognized. Under Diane's leadership, company policies were changing at a dizzying pace. The family-friendly atmosphere that had defined our workplace culture was replaced by cold corporate efficiency. I'd reluctantly returned after 3 days, finding myself relocated to a windowless office that had previously been a storage closet. My executive access had been revoked, my team reassigned. My new title, Family Brand Ambassador, a meaningless position created to sideline me while maintaining appearances. From my diminished position, I watched in horror as Diane systematically dismantled everything my father had built. The first casualties were the employees most loyal to Dad and me. Marguerite from accounting, who'd been with the company for 18 years, was let go for redundancy reasons. Sam, our property manager, who'd started as Dad's assistant fresh out of college, was replaced by Kyle, a friend of Diane's with half the experience and twice the salary. "It's nothing personal," Diane had announced in an all-staff email. "Just necessary restructuring to remain competitive in today's market." But it felt deeply personal to those losing jobs they'd held for years, and to me watching my father's extended work family being torn apart. The changes went beyond personnel. Sunridge had always focused on building relationships with clients, taking time to understand their needs and finding perfect matches. Under Diane's direction, the focus shifted to high-volume transactions, quick sales, minimal service, maximum profit. Agents were given sales quotas and scripts to follow, turning the personalized experience into an assembly line. I tried calling Jason repeatedly, but his responses were brief and evasive. "Diane knows what she's doing," he texted after my 5th attempt. "The business world is changing. Dad's approach was becoming outdated." It felt like a betrayal of everything our father stood for. Harold Parker hadn't built Sunridge just to make money. He'd created a company with values, one that served the community while providing for our family. Jason had never been interested in the business, so how could he suddenly have such strong opinions about its direction? The answer became clear when I overheard Diane on the phone in the break room. "The initial changes are just phase 1, she was saying to someone. "Once we streamline operations and cut the dead weight, the valuation will increase substantially. I'm thinking we could be acquisition ready by Q3. My blood ran cold. She wasn't trying to run Sunridge. She was preparing to sell it. That afternoon, I tried to access the company's financial reports, only to find my permissions revoked. When I approached Thomas about it, he glanced nervously over his shoulder before speaking in a hushed tone. "Audrey, be careful. Diane's watching who talks to you. But you should know, there are some financial decisions being made that—" He hesitated. "That your father would never have approved." "What kind of decisions?" "I can't say more right now. Just start documenting everything. And check your father's will again. There must be something there about succession." Before I could press him further, Diane appeared, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Thomas, I need those projections for the bank meeting," she said smoothly. "Audrey, shouldn't you be calling clients to reassure them about our transition? That is your job now, isn't it?" As Thomas hurried away, Diane's smile dropped. "I've noticed you spending a lot of time with the financial team. As a brand ambassador, that's hardly necessary, is it?" "I built relationships with those clients," I replied. "I want to make sure they're being taken care of." "They're being taken care of more efficiently now," Diane said. "Your father's approach was charming but outdated. This company needs to evolve to survive. Is that why you're firing people who've dedicated their careers to Sunridge to evolve?" Diane's eyes narrowed. "I'm making necessary changes to a failing business model. Your father was too sentimental about this company. Sentiment doesn't generate profit." The casual dismissal of Dad's legacy made my hands shake with anger. "This company has been profitable for 25 years because of that sentiment, because people trust us." "Trust doesn't scale," Diane replied coldly. "And neither does your father's mom-and-pop approach to real estate. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run." As she walked away, I noticed Cassandra watching the exchange concern etched on her face. Later, she found me in my closet office. "Audrey, something's not right," she said, closing the door behind her. "Diane's been meeting with representatives from Westfield Corporate Holdings. They're known for buying family businesses, stripping them down, and absorbing their client lists. She's planning to sell Sunridge." I said the suspicion I'd harbored now confirmed. "That's not all," Cassandra continued, lowering her voice. "She's been telling people you're emotionally unstable since your father's death, that you've been making erratic decisions, and that's why she had to step in." The character assassination stung almost as much as the corporate takeover. Not only was Diane stealing my birthright, but she was also destroying my reputation in the process. That evening, I sat in my apartment surrounded by old photos of Dad and me at various company events. In one, we were cutting the ribbon on our second office location. In another, accepting a community business award. These weren't just business milestones, they were family memories. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Diane says you're interfering with her leadership. Please stop making this difficult." No concern for how I was feeling, no acknowledgement of what was being taken from me. My own brother had become a stranger dancing to Diane's tune while our father's legacy was being dismantled. I texted back, "When did money become more important than family, than Dad's memory?" His response came hours later. "Diane has a vision for the company. I trust her business judgment." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story, something I was missing. Why had Dad never formalized a succession plan if he'd been grooming me to take over? It wasn't like him to leave something so important to chance. With that question burning in my mind, I made a decision. If Diane wanted a fight for Sunridge Properties, she would get one. I wouldn't let my father's legacy be sold off to the highest bidder without discovering the truth first. 2 weeks after the funeral, the situation at Sunridge had deteriorated further. My tiny office now lacked even basic supplies. My requests for printer access and business cards mysteriously lost in the system. Diane had removed me from all client email threads and strategy meetings. I was being systematically erased from the company. The morning staff meetings had become a daily exercise in humiliation. Diane would ask for my input only to immediately dismiss my suggestions as outdated or lacking vision. When I presented data showing our client satisfaction scores dropping under the new policies, she cut me off. "Audrey's still clinging to her father's way of doing things," she told the room with a condescending smile. "Change is difficult for some people to accept, especially during grief. Let's move on to productive discussions." The dismissal was calculated to undermine my credibility while making her appear compassionate. Several employees shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Fear had replaced the family atmosphere Dad had cultivated for decades. After one particularly brutal meeting where Diane had publicly questioned my professional capabilities, Cassandra found me in the break room trying to compose myself. "This isn't right," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "I've been tracking the sales numbers Diane's reporting to the board versus our actual transactions." I opened the folder to find meticulously documented discrepancies. "She's inflating the success of her new policies," Cassandra nodded, "and hiding the client complaints. 3 major accounts have already left because of the new approach, but the board hasn't been informed." This was the evidence I needed to start building a case, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. I needed to understand my legal standing, which meant I needed to know exactly what Dad's will said about Sunridge. That afternoon, I visited Walter Greenfield, our family lawyer and Dad's golf buddy for 20 years. His downtown office was cluttered with legal texts and family photos, including several of him and Dad at charity events. "Audrey, I've been meaning to call you," Walter said, embracing me warmly. "How are you holding up?" "Not well," I admitted. "Walter, Diane has taken over Sunridge. She's claiming there was no formal succession plan, and that as Jason's wife, she has the right to lead the company." Walter's bushy eyebrows shot up. "That's not my understanding of your father's wishes at all." "So there was a succession plan." "Of course there was. Harold was meticulous about these things." Walter frowned, adjusting his glasses. "The will reading was scheduled for next week. I assumed everyone was respecting the traditional mourning period before addressing business matters." My heart sank. Diane didn't wait for the reading. She moved in the day after the funeral. Walter's expression darkened. "That's highly inappropriate. The will explicitly addresses Sunridge's leadership succession." "What does it say?" I leaned forward anxiously. "I can't reveal the specifics until the official reading, but I can tell you your father made his intentions very clear." Walter hesitated. "Audrey, there's something else. Your father left a sealed letter with instructions that it be opened 1 month after his death. He was very specific about the timing." "A letter. What does it say?" "I don't know. It's sealed." Walter checked his calendar. "That would be a little less than 2 weeks from now." I felt a mix of frustration and hope. "I'm not sure Sunridge will still exist in 2 weeks. Diane's already meeting with potential buyers." Walter looked genuinely alarmed. "That would be a direct violation of the estate terms. No assets are to be sold or transferred until the will is executed." "Can we move up the will reading or open the letter early?" Walter shook his head. "The will reading is already scheduled for the earliest possible date given the legal requirements. As for the letter, your father was adamant about the timing. He said you'd understand when the time came." I left Walter's office with more questions than answers, but with one certainty: Dad had not intended for Diane to take over. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to confront my brother directly. Jason agreed to meet me at a coffee shop halfway between his medical practice and Sunridge. When he arrived, I was shocked by his appearance. My normally well-groomed brother looked tired with dark circles under his eyes and his shirt slightly rumpled. "You look terrible," I said as he slid into the booth across from me. 60-hour weeks will do that," he replied, avoiding my eyes. What's so urgent, Audrey? I have patients waiting. Diane is destroying Dad's company, I said bluntly. She's fired half the long-term staff she's meeting with corporate buyers, and she's telling everyone I'm too emotionally unstable to lead. Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. Diane knows business. She's making necessary changes. Necessary for what? I interrupted. For selling off Dad's legacy to the highest bidder, is that what you want? It's not that simple, Jason said, his voice low. Sunridge isn't as financially sound as Dad led everyone to believe. Diane discovered some issues. What issues? Dad ran a transparent operation. Thomas would have told me if there were problems. Jason fidgeted with his coffee cup. Diane says Thomas has been covering up declining revenues. That's why she's restructuring, to save the company. I stared at my brother in disbelief. And you believe that without seeing any evidence, Thomas was Dad's friend for 30 years. He's the most honest person I know. Diane showed me the numbers, Jason insisted, but wouldn't meet my eyes. Did you actually look at them, or did you just take her word for it? His silence was answer enough. I leaned forward, trying to understand what had happened to my brother. Jason Walter told me Dad had a specific succession plan in his will. Did you know that? A flash of surprise crossed his face. Diane said there wasn't anything formal, that as the only family member with advanced business training, she was the logical choice. And you didn't question that, didn't think to wait for the will reading. Jason's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood abruptly. I have to go. Emergency at the office. As he turned to leave, I grabbed his arm. Jason, Diane has been planning this takeover for months. I think she's manipulating you. For a moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. Then his expression hardened. You're upset about Dad. I get it. But don't drag Diane into your grief. She's trying to save what Dad built. As I watched him hurry away, I realized that confronting Diane directly would be useless until I had more evidence. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but I still didn't have the full picture. What I did know was that Diane had a history I hadn't been aware of. That evening, I researched Diane's business background beyond what she'd shared at family gatherings. What I found was illuminating. Before marrying Jason, she'd been involved with 3 family businesses that were subsequently sold to larger corporations. In each case, she'd entered the company through personal connections, implemented aggressive modernization, then facilitated a lucrative sale. The pattern was clear. Sunridge wasn't the first family legacy Diane had targeted. It was simply the latest in her business acquisition strategy. And my brother, focused on his medical career and blinded by either love or ambition, was her unwitting accomplice. As I continued digging, Thomas called. His voice was hushed, urgent. Audrey, I've been comparing our books from before Harold's death to now. There are discrepancies. Large ones. What kind of discrepancies? Funds being moved between accounts, client deposits being held rather than processed. Nothing overtly illegal yet, but heading in a concerning direction. Can you document this? Already am. But Audrey, be careful. Diane's watching me closely. I think she suspects I'm not fully on board with her plans. The warning was timely. The next day, Diane called me into her office, Dad's office, where the transformation was now complete. All traces of Harold Parker had been erased, replaced by sterile modern furniture and abstract art. Audrey, I've been patient with your adjustment period. Diane began gesturing for me to sit across from her glass desk. But your continued resistance to the new direction is becoming problematic. I wasn't aware I still had enough influence to be problematic, I replied evenly. You've been questioning my decisions to staff, undermining my authority, and I hear you've been meeting with Walter Greenfield. Her tone hardened. Let me be clear. If you can't adapt to your new role and support the company's direction, there won't be a place for you at Sunridge at all. The threat hung in the air between us. I thought of all the employees who'd already lost their jobs, of Dad's legacy being dismantled piece by piece. But I also thought of Walter's revelation about the will and the mysterious letter. "Are you firing me?" I asked, meeting her gaze steadily. Diane's smile was cold. "Consider this a final warning. Fall in line or clear out your desk. Family connection only extends so far." As I left her office, I knew I was running out of time. The will reading was still a week away, and Diane was accelerating her plans. I needed allies, evidence, and a strategy if I was going to save Sunridge from her predatory scheme. 1 month after my father's funeral, Diane called an all-company meeting. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense. More unfamiliar faces than familiar ones now, thanks to her aggressive hiring and firing campaign. I sat in the back, painfully aware of my diminished status. Diane stood at the front, sleek and confident in a designer suit. "I've called you all here to share exciting news about Sunridge's future," she announced. "After careful consideration of market conditions and growth opportunities, I'm pleased to announce we're entering acquisition talks with National Realty Partners." A murmur ran through the room. National Realty Partners was a corporate giant known for buying family businesses, absorbing their client lists, and discarding the rest, including most employees. This strategic partnership will allow Sunridge to scale nationally while providing enhanced resources and technology, Diane continued smoothly. The transition will begin next month, with the formal acquisition expected to complete by quarter's end. I felt the blood drain from my face. She was selling the company, my father's life's work, my professional home, without even waiting for the will reading. "Are there questions?" Diane asked, her tone suggesting there shouldn't be. Against my better judgment, I raised my hand. Diane's smile tightened as she acknowledged me. "Audrey," I stood aware of all eyes on me. "What happens to our employees under this acquisition?" "National will evaluate current staff for potential retention," Diane replied vaguely. "Those who align with their corporate culture will have opportunities." "So most people will lose their jobs," I translated, "and our clients. Will they maintain the personalized service they've come to expect from Sunridge?" Diane's eyes narrowed. "Our clients will benefit from National's extensive resources. Change is inevitable in business, Audrey. Your father understood that." The invocation of Dad pushed me over the edge. My father built this company to serve this community, not to be gutted and sold off. He believed in relationships over transactions. He wouldn't recognize what you've turned Sunridge into. The room fell silent. Diane's composure slipped momentarily, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "Your father's approach, while charming, was becoming obsolete. Sentiment doesn't generate shareholder value." "There are no shareholders," I exclaimed. "This is a family business. Our employees are like family. And that emotional attachment is exactly why you were never qualified to lead," Diane snapped. "Business isn't about feelings, Audrey. It's about results. Your father coddled you, letting you believe you had what it takes to run this company. You don't." The public humiliation was calculated to break me, but instead it crystallized my resolve. "You never cared about Sunridge or what it stands for. This was always about the profit you'd make selling it off." Diane's professional mask dropped completely. "Of course it was. Why else would I waste my time with this provincial little operation? I've restructured companies triple this size. Did you really think I wanted to spend my career in your father's outdated little kingdom?" The naked contempt in her voice stunned the room. Even her new hires looked uncomfortable. "Security," Diane called sharply. "Please escort Ms. Parker from the building. Her employment is terminated effective immediately." 2 men I didn't recognize approached. One took my arm firmly. "Don't touch me," I said, jerking away. "I can walk out on my own." Cassandra stood as I passed. "This isn't right," she said loudly. "Harold Parker wanted Audrey to lead this company." "Noted," Diane said coldly. "Anyone else who shares that sentiment is welcome to follow her out the door." I kept my head high as I was marched through the office I'd worked in for 6 years. As I passed Thomas's office, he gave me a subtle nod. a signal we'd arranged. He would continue gathering evidence from the inside. In the parking lot, the reality of what had just happened hit me full force. I sat in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, and finally allowed the tears to come. Not just for the job I'd lost, but for my father's dream being corrupted, for the employees who depended on Sunridge, and for my own failure to protect what Dad had entrusted to me. I don't know how long I sat there before a tap on my window startled me. It was Jason, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "Get in," I said, unlocking the door. He slid into the passenger seat. "Cassandra called me. She said Diane fired you." "Now you care." I wiped at my tears angrily. "Where have you been for the past month while she's been destroying Dad's company?" Jason stared at his hands. "I've been blind, Audrey. So blind. Diane convinced me the company was failing, that her expertise was the only thing that could save it. She showed me reports, projections. Fabricated ones," I cut in. "Thomas has been tracking the real numbers. Sunridge was thriving under Dad's leadership." "I know that now," Jason said quietly. "Cassandra sent me copies of the actual financials, and last night, I found something on Diane's laptop." My heart quickened. "What?" "Emails between her and National Realty dating back 8 months. Before Dad died. She's been planning this takeover since before we even knew Dad was sick." The timeline made horrible sense. Diane's sudden interest in the business, her detailed questions about operations, her positioning herself as a business expert in family discussions. "She's been manipulating both of us," I said. "Using your medical focus against you, making you think you couldn't understand the business side, and using my grief against me, making everyone think I'm unstable." Jason nodded miserably. "There's more. Tomorrow is 1 month since Dad died." "The letter?" I breathed. "Walter told me Dad left a sealed letter to be opened 1 month after his death." "Diane knows about it," Jason said. "I overheard her on the phone trying to convince Walter to let her open it early as acting CEO. He refused." A cold certainty settled over me. She's rushing the sale because she knows something's in that letter that could stop her. "The will reading is tomorrow too," Jason added. I think I've made a terrible mistake, Audrey." The admission was the first step toward healing the rift between us, but there was no time to dwell on it. "We need to get to Walter's office. Now." Walter seemed unsurprised to see both of us arrive at his office unannounced. "I was about to call you," he said, ushering us into his private office. "Today marks 1 month since Harold's passing." He unlocked a cabinet and removed a sealed envelope with, "To be opened 1 month after my death," written in Dad's distinctive handwriting. "Should we wait for Diane?" Jason asked uncomfortably. Walter's expression was grave. "Your father was specific about who should be present. The letter is addressed to Audrey and Jason Parker only." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside, recognizing Dad's handwriting immediately. "My dear children," I read aloud. "If you're reading this, I've been gone for 1 month. I hope you've had time to begin healing, because what I'm about to share may be difficult to hear. For the past year, I've been aware of Diane's interest in acquiring Sunridge for resale. Through business connections, I learned of her pattern with other family companies. I chose not to confront her directly, but instead to prepare for the possibility that she might make a move after my death. Jason, I know your focus is medicine, not business, and I respect that choice. But I fear your wife sees Sunridge as nothing more than a business opportunity. I hope I'm wrong. Audrey, I've been preparing you to lead not just because you're capable, though you are, but because you understand that Sunridge is more than a profit center. It's a community, a family. To protect what we've built, I've taken legal steps that will activate upon the reading of my will. The succession plan is clear. Sunridge Properties is to be led by Audrey Parker as CEO with a board of directors, including Jason Parker, Thomas Green, and Walter Greenfield. Furthermore, I've established a trust that controls 75% of Sunridge's shares. This trust stipulates that the company cannot be sold for a minimum of 5 years after my death, and any sale must be approved by a unanimous board vote. I'm sorry for the pain this situation may have caused you both. Remember that business decisions can be fixed, but family bonds need nurturing. Whatever has happened in the month since my passing, I urge you to find your way back to each other. With eternal love, Dad. Silence filled the room as the implications of the letter sank in. Jason's face had gone pale. "She knew," he whispered. "She must have suspected something like this was coming. That's why she moved so quickly to establish control and push the sale through." Walter nodded gravely. "Harold came to me 6 months ago with concerns about Diane's intentions. The provisions in his will and this trust were his safeguards." "But they only work if they're executed," I said. "The will reading is tomorrow, but Diane's already announced the sale to National." "Then we need to stop her," Jason said with newfound determination. "I've been a fool, Audrey, but I'm with you now." For the first time since Dad's death, I felt a glimmer of hope. With the letter as proof of Dad's intentions, Jason's support, and the evidence Thomas and Cassandra had gathered, we had a chance to reclaim Sunridge and honor Dad's legacy. "We'll need to move quickly," Walter advised. "I suggest an emergency board meeting immediately following the will reading tomorrow." As we left Walter's office, I felt Dad's presence stronger than I had since his death. He'd known what might happen and had prepared for it, trusting that Jason and I would find our way through together. "I'm so sorry, Audrey," Jason said as we walked to our cars. "I should have trusted you, not her." "We'll make it right," I replied, squeezing his arm. "That's what matters now." The will reading the next day was a tense affair. Diane arrived flanked by her personal attorney, her confidence undiminished despite Jason's conspicuous absence from her side. He sat next to me instead, a united front that clearly unsettled her. Walter read through the standard provisions with professional detachment until he reached the section on Sunridge Properties. "Regarding the family business Sunridge Properties, Inc." He read, "I hereby establish the following succession plan. Audrey Parker shall assume the role of Chief Executive Officer effective immediately upon my death." Diane's composure cracked. "That can't be right." Walter continued without acknowledging her interruption. "A board of directors shall be established consisting of Audrey Parker as chairperson, Jason Parker, Thomas Green, and Walter Greenfield. Major company decisions require a majority board vote, with sales or acquisitions requiring unanimous approval." "This is the first I'm hearing of this," Diane interjected. "Harold never mentioned these arrangements. Furthermore," Walter pressed on neon, "I have established the Parker Family Trust, which holds 75% of Sunridge Properties shares. The trust stipulates that the company cannot be sold or merged for a minimum of 5 years following my death." Diane's attorney leaned over to whisper in her ear, her face flushed with anger. "These provisions weren't disclosed when I began implementing changes at Sunridge. I've already entered negotiations with National Realty Partners, without legal authority to do so," Walter noted calmly. "Any agreements you've made are not binding, as you had no standing to negotiate on behalf of Sunridge Properties." "I am family," Diane insisted. "As Jason's wife." "You are family," I acknowledged, "but that doesn't give you the right to sell my father's company against his explicit wishes." Diane turned to Jason. "Are you going to let her talk to me like this, after everything I've done to save your father's failing business?" "The business wasn't failing," Jason replied quietly. "That was a story you created to justify your takeover. I've seen the real numbers now, Diane, and I've seen the emails showing you planned this before Dad died." The color drained from Diane's face. "You went through my private emails and found evidence of fraud," I added. "Manipulated financial statements, misrepresented authority funds diverted from client accounts." "That's slander," Diane's attorney warned. "It's documented fact," Thomas countered, producing a folder of evidence. As CFO, I've maintained records of all financial discrepancies since Ms. Collins began making unauthorized changes. Diane's confident facade crumbled completely. This is ridiculous. I was saving a company stuck in the dark ages. Harold's sentimental approach was holding Sunridge back from its true potential. That wasn't your decision to make, I said firmly. Dad built Sunridge on relationships and trust. Those values aren't outdated. They're the foundation of our success. An emergency board meeting has been called for this afternoon, Walter announced. As per Harold's will, the newly established board will address the unauthorized actions taken over the past month. Diane stood abruptly. This isn't over. National Realty's offer is in the millions. You're throwing away a fortune because of sentimentality. We're preserving a legacy, I corrected. Something worth more than any buyout offer. As Diane stormed out, her attorney, trailing behind the weight that had pressed on my chest for a month, began to lift. Dad had prepared for this possibility, putting safeguards in place to protect what he'd built. The emergency board meeting that afternoon was straightforward. The newly formed board unanimously voted to invalidate all changes made by Diane, to rescind the acquisition talks with National Realty, and to reinstate employees who had been wrongfully terminated. Jason, looking more like himself than he had in weeks, proposed a motion. I move that Audrey Parker be officially instated as CEO of Sunridge Properties, effective immediately in accordance with our father's wishes. The motion passed unanimously. As we left the meeting, Cassandra was waiting outside with several other long-term employees. Is it true? She asked hopefully. Are you taking over? It's true, I confirmed. And my first act as CEO is to invite everyone who was let go to return to their positions. The cheer that went up echoed through the office, drowning out the sound of Diane clearing out her things from what would once again be my father's office. And now mine. Jason approached as I watched Diane exit the building for the final time. She's moving out of the house, he said quietly. Our marriage was more of a business arrangement than I realized. I'm sorry, Jason. He shook his head. Don't be. It's better to know the truth even when it hurts. He squeezed my shoulder. Dad would be so proud of you, Audrey. You fought for his legacy when I couldn't see what was happening. We fought for it together in the end, I reminded him. That's what Dad would have wanted most. The next morning, I arrived early at Sunridge Properties. The building felt different already, lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had lifted. I stood in the doorway of what had been Dad's office, now returned to its original state. His sailing maps were back on the walls, his oak desk centered in the room. Thomas appeared beside me. Welcome back, boss. It feels strange, I admitted, sitting at his desk. Harold always said that desk would be yours someday, Thomas replied. He believed in you completely. As employees began arriving, I noticed a different energy. Smiles returned, conversations flowed more freely. The family atmosphere that had defined Sunridge under Dad's leadership was already beginning to resurface. In the weeks that followed, we worked to rebuild what Diane had damaged. Client relationships were mended, with many expressing relief that Sunridge would remain a local family-run business. The employees who had been let go returned, bringing their institutional knowledge and relationships back to our community. 6 months after taking my rightful place as CEO, I sat at my father's desk, my desk now, reviewing quarterly reports that showed Sunridge not only recovering, but thriving. The trust Dad established had provided the stability we needed to weather the storm, and the board he'd selected offered the perfect balance of experience and innovation. The journey had been painful but transformative. Through the betrayal and struggle, I'd discovered strengths I didn't know I possessed. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to stand firm in the face of intimidation, and to fight for what mattered. Not just the business itself, but the values it represented. Jason had found his way back as well. Though his medical career remained his primary focus, He took an active interest in Sunridge's community outreach programs, helping establish a foundation in Dad's name to provide housing assistance to families in need. As for Diane, we heard she'd moved to Chicago to join a corporate restructuring firm. Her attempts to pursue legal action against Sunridge had fizzled when faced with the overwhelming evidence of her misconduct. Sometimes karma works exactly as it should. The healing process wasn't just professional but personal. For weeks after Dad's death, grief had consumed me so completely that I couldn't imagine finding joy again. The betrayal by Diane and temporarily by Jason had added layers of pain that seemed insurmountable. But gradually, with the support of the Sunridge family, I began to rebuild. Cassandra became not just a colleague, but a trusted friend. Thomas shared stories of Dad's early days building the business, filling in pieces of his history I'd never known. Even Angela from reception invited me to family dinners, knowing I was still adjusting to life without Dad. One innovation I implemented was the employee profit-sharing plan Dad had always talked about but never fully developed. Real estate isn't just about property, I told the team when announcing the plan. It's about people. About helping them find homes, build futures, create memories. Everyone who contributes to that mission deserves to share in its success. On the anniversary of Dad's death, I organized a company gathering, not a somber memorial, but a celebration of his legacy. We planted an oak tree outside the Sunridge office, a living symbol of the strong roots he'd established and the growth that would continue for generations. Standing under that sapling, I felt Dad's presence more strongly than I had since his death. Not as a painful absence, but as a continuing influence, a foundation upon which I could build something new while honoring what came before. The true measure of leadership isn't what you achieve, Dad used to say, but what you leave behind for others to build upon. Through all the pain and struggle, I'd come to understand the depth of that wisdom. The betrayal I'd experienced had taught me to trust my instincts but verify with facts. It had shown me the importance of establishing clear legal protections for what matters most. But most importantly, it had reinforced the value of authentic relationships over transactional ones, in business and in life. Today, Sunridge Properties stands stronger than ever, not despite the crisis we weathered, but because of it. We emerged with greater clarity about our values, stronger bonds within our team, and a renewed commitment to the community we serve. As I look out from my office window at the city my father loved, I'm filled with gratitude for the legacy he entrusted to me, not just a successful business, but a philosophy that values people over profit, integrity over expediency, and family, both blood and chosen above all. To those of you facing betrayal or loss in your own lives, I hope my story offers some comfort. The pain you feel is real and valid, but it isn't the end of your story. Sometimes the darkest moments become the foundation for something stronger, more authentic, and more meaningful than what existed before. Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? How did you handle betrayal from someone you trusted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their struggle. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the path forward requires us to stand our ground first.
My name is Megan Wilson. I'm 28, and 3 years ago, my brother Nathan framed me for stealing $39,000 from our family business. Dad believed him instantly. I was thrown out of our home with nothing but a backpack and the shattering realization that blood isn't always thicker than water. Fast forward to last month, they're begging for my help to save the business from bankruptcy. They expected anger, maybe revenge. What they got instead? Something neither of them saw coming. If you're watching this from somewhere that's taught you about family betrayal too, drop a comment below. I'd love to know I'm not alone in what I'm about to share. Growing up, I always thought our family was picture perfect. Well, as perfect as a family could be after losing a mother. Mom passed away from breast cancer when I was 15 and Nathan was 17. It destroyed us all, but Dad, Richard Wilson, the proudest small business owner in Minneapolis, somehow found the strength to hold us together. Megan, he would tell me during those dark days, we're Wilsons. We bend but never break. His construction company, Wilson Builders, became our shared purpose. While some families bonded over vacation photos or holiday traditions, we connected through blueprints spread across the dining table and weekend visits to work sites. I still remember the scent of sawdust clinging to Dad's flannel shirts when he'd come home, lifting me up as a little girl despite his exhaustion. My little businesswoman, he'd call me whenever I'd ask about profit margins or material costs. Nathan would roll his eyes, but back then, it seemed like harmless sibling rivalry. After Mom died, Dad became emotionally dependent on us in ways I didn't fully understand until years later. Nathan took on the man-of-the-house role, handling physical work at construction sites, while I became Dad's emotional confidant. Our grief bound us together, creating what I foolishly believed was an unbreakable foundation. College was a brief intermission from family life. I earned my business degree with honors, focusing on accounting and management, practical choices to help the family business thrive. Meanwhile, Nathan dropped out after 2 semesters, claiming college was a waste when he could learn everything on the job. Dad never pressured him to return, instead giving him increasing responsibilities on construction sites. When I returned home with my fresh diploma and big ideas, Dad welcomed me with open arms. Wilson Builders needs your brains, he announced at my graduation dinner. Nathan's got the brawn covered, but you've got the financial sense of your mother. I noticed Nathan's smile tighten at those words, but dismissed it as momentary jealousy that would fade once we settled into our roles. The first year working together went surprisingly well. I modernized our accounting systems, introduced digital project management tools, and streamlined our billing processes. Dad beamed with pride when I landed us a contract with a major developer by creating a detailed proposal that outshone our competitors. She's a natural, he told anyone who would listen. Nathan and I established what seemed like a comfortable dynamic. He supervised job sites while I handled office operations. We had lunch together most days, sharing stories and occasionally reminiscing about Mom. In retrospect, I should have noticed how he never truly celebrated my successes, how his compliments always carried a subtle edge. Must be nice sitting in an air-conditioned office while some of us break our backs, he'd joke, but there was something in his tone that should have warned me. By my second year at Wilson Builders, our revenue had increased by 30%. Dad started talking about expanding, perhaps opening a second office in St. Paul. Megan's financial management makes it possible, he announced during a staff meeting. I caught Nathan's expression darkening before he quickly masked it with congratulations. That Christmas, Dad gave me Mom's old pearl necklace. She'd want you to have this, he said, voice thick with emotion. You've become the backbone of this family, just like she was. I was too overwhelmed by the sentiment to notice Nathan silently leaving the room. I was so naive, so caught up in the comfort of being valued that I misread every warning sign. I thought Nathan's occasional moodiness was just stress from managing difficult work sites. I believed our sibling bond was strong enough to withstand professional differences. I trusted that family would always come first for all of us. How wrong I was. Looking back now, I realize Nathan wasn't just my brother working alongside me. He was watching me, studying me, learning exactly how our systems worked and where my blind spots were. He was taking note of how implicitly Dad trusted me with finances, how rarely my work was questioned or double-checked. He was patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And I, in my blissful ignorance, handed him the weapon he would use to destroy me. The first red flag appeared about 6 months before everything fell apart. I was reconciling our monthly expenses when I noticed discrepancies in our materials inventory. 3 pallets of premium hardwood flooring had been ordered and paid for, but only 2 were recorded as delivered. When I asked Nathan about it, he shrugged it off. Probably a clerical error, he said, barely looking up from his phone. Or maybe one of the guys counted wrong. I'll look into it. I should have pressed harder, but we were in the middle of our busiest season, with 5 major projects running simultaneously. The issue slipped down my priority list, and when Nathan later assured me everything was sorted out, I believed him. Around that same time, Nathan's lifestyle began to change subtly. He traded his reliable old truck for a brand new Range Rover. His wardrobe gradually upgraded from practical work clothes to designer labels. When I commented on his new watch, a Rolex I recognized from luxury ads, he casually mentioned smart investments and changed the subject. Since when are you into the stock market? I asked over dinner one night. There's a lot you don't know about me, sis, he replied with an enigmatic smile. I've been learning from a buddy who works in finance, making my money work for me instead of just working for money. Dad seemed impressed rather than suspicious. That's my boy, always hustling. The pride in his voice stung a little. My financial management had saved the company thousands, yet Nathan's vague investments earned him immediate praise. Then came the client complaint that should have been my wake-up call. Barbara Sinclair, one of our most loyal customers for whom we'd renovated multiple properties, called me directly, confusion evident in her voice. Megan, I just received another invoice for the master bathroom tiles we already paid for last month. Is this a mistake? I pulled up her account, finding 2 separate charges for the same materials. I'm so sorry, Barbara. This is definitely an error. I'll correct it immediately. After she hung up, I dug deeper, discovering 3 other instances of double billing over the past 2 months. All had been entered into our system using my login credentials, yet I had no recollection of processing them. When confronted, Nathan suggested I might be overworking and making mistakes. Maybe you need a vacation, he said, his concerns seemingly genuine. You're always here late. It's easy to slip up when you're exhausted. That night, I stayed even later, combing through our books with increasing alarm. Small discrepancies appeared throughout, excess materials ordered, but never used, minor charges without proper documentation, labor hours that didn't align with project timelines. Each individual instance was small enough to overlook in the daily rush, but together they painted a disturbing picture. I created a spreadsheet documenting every suspicious transaction, planning to show it to Dad the following week once I had organized the evidence. I saved it on my personal drive, password protected, not wanting to make accusations without absolute certainty. The next day, Nathan brought coffee to my desk, something he'd never done before. Burning the midnight oil again? He asked, nodding toward my computer. Anything I should know about? Just routine checks, I replied, suddenly reluctant to share my concerns. Something in his overly casual tone made my skin prickle with unease. That weekend, we had a family dinner at Dad's favorite steakhouse to celebrate landing a major commercial contract. The tension between Nathan and me was palpable, at least to me. He was unusually attentive to Dad, reminiscing about childhood fishing trips and discussing plans to renovate Dad's cabin now that business is booming. When Dad excused himself to the restroom, Nathan leaned across the table, his expression unreadable. You should really be careful about throwing around accusations, he said quietly. My heart stuttered. What are you talking about? Your little spreadsheet. Very thorough. His smile never reached his eyes. But you might want to look closer to home before pointing fingers. Before I could respond, Dad returned and Nathan seamlessly switched to discussing the upcoming Minnesota Vikings season as if nothing had happened. That night, I checked my protected files, finding the spreadsheet seemingly untouched. Yet Nathan's words echoed in my mind. How did he know about it? What did he mean by closer to home? I should have backed up my files. I should have spoken to Dad immediately. I should have trusted my instincts that something was deeply wrong. Instead, I convinced myself I was overreacting. Nathan was my brother. We'd grown up together, mourned our mother together, built our careers side by side. Despite our differences, family was family. Whatever issues existed, we could resolve them like adults. 3 days later, everything I believed about family loyalty was shattered beyond repair. Monday morning started with such promise. Dad called me into his office before Nathan arrived, his expression unusually serious but hopeful. "I've been thinking, Megan," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "You've proven yourself beyond my expectations these past few years. I'd like to promote you to financial director with profit sharing. Eventually, I see you and Nathan as equal partners when I retire." My heart swelled with pride and gratitude. "Dad, I don't know what to say. You earned it. This company's growth is largely thanks to your financial oversight." He smiled, adding, "Let's discuss details over lunch, just the two of us." I returned to my office floating on air, unaware that Nathan had arrived early and was standing in the hallway, just out of sight. Later, security footage would show him watching me, his expression darkening before he slipped into the administrative office, where our financial server was housed. At the time, I noticed nothing unusual. Around 10:30 a.m., our bank called. The representative's voice was tense as she asked to speak with Richard Wilson regarding suspicious activity on our business account. I transferred the call to Dad, thinking it was probably a false alarm from our recent large material purchases. 20 minutes later, Dad's roar echoed through the building. "Megan." "My office." "No." I hurried in to find him standing behind his desk, face flushed with anger. $39,000, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Transferred out of our business account into a personal account last night." "Want to explain that?" "What?" "That's impossible." "I didn't." "Don't lie to me." He turned his monitor to show me the transaction details. There it was, $39,000 transferred to an account I didn't recognize, but the digital authorization bore my employee ID and password. "Dad, I swear I didn't do this." "Someone must have accessed my credentials." "Like who?" His eyes narrowed. Before I could answer, Nathan appeared at the doorway, his expression a perfect mask of concern. "Everything okay?" I heard shouting. Dad gestured him in. "Your sister has been stealing from us." "What?" "No way." Nathan's performance was masterful, the right blend of shock, disappointment, and reluctance. "Megan wouldn't do that, would she?" "The evidence is right here." Dad pointed to the screen. "Dad, please," I pleaded, "I'm being set up." "Let me look into this." "There's more," Nathan interrupted softly, pulling out his phone. I didn't want to believe it, but he handed it to Dad, who scrolled through what appeared to be text messages from my number discussing money transfers and plans to leave the company. "These are fake." I protested, reaching for the phone. "I never sent those." Dad pulled the phone away. "They're from your number, Megan." "Check my actual phone then." I pulled it out, hands shaking. "Those messages aren't there because I never sent them." "You could have deleted them," Nathan suggested gently, as if it pained him to accuse me. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Dad demanded access to my computer, where Nathan reluctantly pointed out a hidden folder containing spreadsheets of company accounts with notes about fund transfers. My legitimate investigation spreadsheet was gone, replaced by fabricated evidence of embezzlement. "I noticed discrepancies last month," Nathan confessed, his voice breaking convincingly. "Small amounts missing." I didn't want to believe it was Megan, so I kept quiet, hoping I was wrong. But then I saw her creating these spreadsheets after hours. "You son of a," I lunged toward him, only to be restrained by Dad. "That's enough," he shouted. "The evidence is clear, Megan." "Dad, please," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "I'm being framed." "Nathan's been acting strange for months. He's the one with the new car, the expensive watch. Where's that money coming from?" "Don't try to deflect this onto your brother," Dad snapped. "He works hard, and unlike you, he doesn't have access to our financial systems." This was the moment I realized how thoroughly Nathan had orchestrated my downfall. He'd positioned himself as the hardworking, loyal son while painting me as the privileged, entitled daughter. He'd studied our security systems well enough to bypass them without leaving traces. He'd manufactured evidence so convincing that my protestations sounded like desperate lies. And worst of all, he'd correctly calculated that Dad would believe him over me when pushed to choose. As the reality of my situation sank in, a cold numbness spread through me. I watched Dad and Nathan exchange glances, Dad's filled with disappointment and anger, Nathan's with perfectly simulated sadness and betrayal. In that moment, I understood I'd already been tried and convicted in Dad's mind. Nothing I could say would change what was about to happen. Dad's face transformed as I'd never seen before. The warm, proud father who'd raised me disappeared, replaced by a stranger whose eyes held nothing but cold fury and disgust. "I welcomed you into this business," he said, his voice shaking. "Gave you responsibility, trusted you with everything we've built. And this is how you repay me? By stealing from your own family." "Dad, please," I tried again, desperation making my voice crack. "Don't call me that," he snapped. "No daughter of mine would do something this despicable." Those words hit me like physical blows. I stumbled backward, gripping the edge of his desk to stay upright. "Richard," I switched to his first name, a last desperate attempt to reach him. "I would never steal from you. I love you. I love this company. Nathan is setting me up. Enough." He slammed his fist down, making us both jump. "I've seen the evidence with my own eyes. Your signature, your password, your spreadsheets. Stop insulting my intelligence." Nathan stood slightly behind Dad, his expression a masterpiece of pained concern. To anyone else, he looked like a heartbroken brother witnessing a family tragedy. Only I could see the gleam of triumph in his eyes. "What's happening here is very clear," Dad continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "You got greedy. Thought you deserved more than your salary. Decided to help yourself to company funds. And now that you're caught, you're trying to blame your brother." He shook his head. "I don't even recognize you anymore." "Maybe she needs help, Dad," Nathan suggested softly. "Professional help." I laughed bitterly. "That's rich coming from you." Dad squared his shoulders. "Here's what's going to happen. You're fired, effective immediately. Brandon will escort you to collect your personal belongings, only personal items, nothing from this company. Your access credentials are already being revoked." Brandon, our security guard who'd watched me grow up in this building, stood uncomfortably in the doorway. The shame of being supervised like a criminal by someone who used to slip me candy as a child was almost unbearable. "And then?" I asked, my voice hollow. "And then you leave. You're not welcome in my house or my business. You're throwing me out? Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore." His voice cracked slightly, the only indication that this was affecting him at all. "You should have thought about consequences before stealing from us." "I didn't." "You have 30 minutes to pack whatever you can carry from your room at home. Nathan will supervise to ensure nothing that doesn't belong to you leaves the premises." The surreal quality of the situation intensified as Brandon led me to my office. Colleagues I'd worked alongside for years averted their eyes as I emptied my desk into a cardboard box. Someone, Nathan, undoubtedly, had already spread the story. I was a pariah in the space of an hour. Nathan appeared as Brandon walked me to my car. "I'll meet you at the house," he said loudly, for others to hear. Then, under his breath as he passed, "I'll make sure Dad's not there when you arrive. No need to make this harder than it already is." His false compassion was perhaps the cruelest touch. At our family home, Nathan watched silently as I frantically stuffed clothing and essentials into a backpack and duffel bag. 30 minutes to pack up a life. Photos of Mom, my degree, basic toiletries, whatever cash I had hidden in my dresser. Everything else, furniture, books, mementos, would have to be abandoned. As I reached the front door, struggling with my bags, Nathan finally spoke. "You always were Dad's favorite, you know." His voice had shed all pretense of regret. After Mom died, it was always Megan's so smart, Megan's going to college, Megan's just like her mother. Do you have any idea what that was like for me? I stared at him, incredulous. So this was revenge? Framing me for theft because you were jealous? He shrugged. Call it correcting an imbalance. Dad will appreciate me now that you're gone. He checked his watch. Your time's up. I need your house key. I dropped it at his feet, refusing to hand it to him directly. He'll figure out what you did eventually. Maybe, but by then it'll be too late for you. He opened the door. Goodbye, sis. Don't bother calling. I'll make sure Dad blocks your number. Standing on the porch of what had been my home since birth, watching my brother close the door on our shared history, something inside me shattered. I had no home, no job, no family, and very little money. My reputation was destroyed in the only industry I'd ever worked in. My father, the person I loved most in the world, believed I'd betrayed him. The first night in a cheap motel room, I experienced what I now know was a panic attack. Hyperventilating, chest constricting, convinced I was dying alone in a strange room. I called Dad 17 times. Straight to voicemail. I texted both him and Nathan, alternating between pleading for understanding and threatening legal action. No responses. By morning, my company email was deactivated. My health insurance terminated. My desk items had been boxed and left with the motel front desk, Brandon's small act of kindness. At the bottom of the box was a handwritten note. I'm sorry. This doesn't seem right. Too little, too late. Nothing seemed right anymore. My entire identity had been stripped away overnight, leaving me adrift in a reality I couldn't comprehend. I was no longer Megan Wilson, respected financial manager and beloved daughter. I was Megan Wilson, alleged thief, family traitor, homeless and unemployed at 25. That first morning of exile, staring at my reflection in the motel bathroom's cracked mirror, I made myself a promise through tears. Somehow, someday, I would reclaim my life and my truth. I just had no idea how long and painful that journey would be. My savings disappeared alarmingly fast. Motel rooms, even cheap ones, add up when they're your only housing option. After 2 weeks, I had to face reality. I needed help or I'd be sleeping in my car. Amber Fletcher, my college roommate, was the only person who answered when I started making desperate calls. Stay as long as you need, she offered, though the tightness in her voice suggested as long as you need had an unspoken time limit. Her one-bedroom apartment became my temporary refuge. I slept on a futon in her living room, trying to minimize my presence in her space, acutely aware of being a charity case. At night, I'd wait until she was asleep before allowing myself to cry. Job hunting was a nightmare. My resume looked great on paper, business degree, 3 years managing finances for a successful construction company, until potential employers called for references. I don't know exactly what Nathan told people in our industry, but doors slammed shut the moment Wilson Builders was mentioned. After 15 rejections in 3 weeks, I lowered my expectations and started applying for retail positions. Even those were suspicious of the gap in my employment history and my vague explanations. Amber's patience wore thin as weeks stretched into a month. Have you considered therapy? She suggested one evening, her tone carefully neutral. You barely eat, you hardly sleep, and I'm just worried about you. She was right. I was spiraling into depression, jumping at every phone notification, hoping it was Dad, spending hours crafting emails he never answered. My self-worth had evaporated. If my own father could believe I was capable of theft, what did that say about me? With Amber's help, I found Dr. Wilson, no relation, thankfully, a therapist who offered sliding scale fees. Our first session, I could barely speak through tears. My brother framed me, my father disowned me, and nobody believes me. I believe you, she said simply. Those 3 words were the first solid ground I'd felt under my feet in weeks. Through therapy, I began understanding the dynamics that had led to my situation. Nathan's jealousy, Dad's emotional dependence after Mom's death, my own blindness to the dysfunction beneath our family's surface. Understanding didn't erase the pain, but it gave it context. 2 months after my exile, I landed a job at Cornerstone Coffee. Minimum wage, early morning shifts, and a manager who clearly had reservations about hiring me. One chance, he warned. Any issues with the register, and you're done. The humiliation of making lattes for business professionals who were my peers just months ago was nearly unbearable. Occasionally, I'd serve former colleagues who would recognize me, their expressions shifting from surprise to awkward pity. Those moments sent me to the bathroom to breathe through panic attacks. With my first paychecks, I found the cheapest studio apartment in Minneapolis, a 6th-floor walk-up with questionable heating and neighbors who fought loudly at all hours. The building smelled perpetually of cabbage and cigarettes, but it was mine and Nathan couldn't take it away. My furnishings were pathetically sparse, a second-hand mattress on the floor, a folding table, a single chair. I showered with dollar store soap and washed my uniforms in the bathroom sink to save quarters for laundry. This was rock bottom, or so I thought. Then came the first Christmas alone. I volunteered to work the holiday shift, unable to face an empty apartment while imagining Nathan and Dad enjoying our traditional family celebration. When my shift ended, I returned home to discover water pouring through my ceiling, a burst pipe in the apartment above. My few possessions were soaked, the mattress ruined. Sitting on my soggy floor surrounded by the wreckage of my already meager life, something inside me finally snapped. Not into further despair, but into clarity. I'd been existing as a victim, waiting for rescue or vindication that would never come. It was time to rescue myself. The next day, I marched into a free legal aid clinic. The attorney listened to my story with professional skepticism. Without evidence, this is your word against theirs, he explained gently. Your brother was clever. Using your credentials means the digital trail leads to you, not him. So there's nothing I can do? My voice cracked. I didn't say that. He leaned forward. You were the financial manager. If your brother's been embezzling, he's likely still doing it. Start building your case. Look for patterns, discrepancies. Document everything. That conversation changed my trajectory. I couldn't undo what Nathan had done to me, but I could prepare for a moment of opportunity if it ever came. I enrolled in online courses in forensic accounting, studying late into the night after exhausting shifts. I created a detailed timeline of events leading to my firing, noting every suspicious incident. I reached out to Barbara Sinclair, who remembered the double billing issue and promised to call if it happened again. Gradually, other small kindnesses emerged. Mrs. Hoffman, an elderly regular at the coffee shop, noticed my worn shoes and gifted me a $100 gift card, just because. Brandon from security sent an anonymous envelope with copies of surveillance footage showing Nathan accessing my computer after hours. A former supplier called to ask if I was available for freelance bookkeeping since Wilson Builders' accounts had become unreliable. These moments were lifelines, small confirmations that perhaps I wasn't entirely alone, that someone somewhere still saw my worth. By the 1-year anniversary of my exile, I'd been promoted to shift supervisor at Cornerstone. My studio apartment now had actual furniture, second-hand but dignified. I'd started a small side business doing bookkeeping for local shops, rebuilding my professional reputation one satisfied client at a time. I'd also stopped calling Dad. The weekly voicemails that went unanswered had become a form of self-torture, each silence reinforcing my abandonment. Dr. Wilson helped me see that healing couldn't begin until I accepted my new reality, however unfair. Your father made his choice, she said during a particularly difficult session. You can leave the door open for reconciliation without standing in the doorway waiting. I taped that quote to my bathroom mirror, reading it every morning as I prepared to face another day. I was no longer waiting to be rescued. I was building a lifeboat, plank by careful plank, that would carry me to whatever shore awaited. I had no way of knowing that the current was already shifting, slowly but inexorably bringing my past rushing back toward me. 2 years after being cast out, my life had found a new rhythm. I'd advanced to manager at Cornerstone Coffee, a position that came with health insurance and paid vacation, luxuries that once seemed unimaginable. My bookkeeping side business had grown to 12 regular clients, mostly small businesses in the neighborhood who appreciated my attention to detail and reasonable rates. I'd moved to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood with actual bedroom walls and functioning appliances. The place had character, exposed brick, large windows, hardwood floors that creaked with history. It wasn't the spacious house I'd grown up in, but it was mine, filled with furniture and decor I'd chosen, a physical manifestation of my rebuilding. My online forensic accounting certification hung framed beside my business degree, a reminder of how far I'd come and the skills I'd gained through adversity. Those late-night classes had transformed my understanding of financial crimes, teaching me to spot patterns and discrepancies I might have missed before. More importantly, I'd found my voice again. The timid, broken woman who'd shuffled into Dr. Wilson's office 2 years earlier had evolved into someone stronger, more perceptive, and far less willing to accept mistreatment. I'd learned to build boundaries, not walls, but healthy perimeters that protected my hard-won peace. My social circle had transformed completely. Amber remained a friend, though our relationship had evolved as I became less dependent. My closest allies now were people I'd met after my fall. Jessica, a lawyer who frequented Cornerstone and eventually became both friend and legal advisor. Marco, a fellow manager whose unfailing humor helped during difficult days. And Zoe, a graphic designer who rented the studio across the hall and appointed herself my fun coordinator when work threatened to consume me. These people knew my story and believed me without question. They'd never met Nathan or Dad, had no connection to my past life, and loved me for who I was now, not who I'd been before. They were my chosen family, filling the void left by blood relatives who'd failed me. Therapy continued, less frequently but with deeper insights. You've processed the trauma, Dr. Wilson noted. Now we're building resilience and wisdom from it. Part of that wisdom was deciding not to pursue legal action against Nathan, at least not yet. Jessica, who specialized in financial crimes, had reviewed my evidence and delivered a sobering assessment. You've built a compelling circumstantial case, she explained over coffee one Sunday. But without access to current company records, we can't prove the ongoing pattern. We'd need a whistleblower or subpoenaed documents. So I do nothing? The frustration in my voice was evident. You wait for the right moment, she corrected. Nathan's type always gets sloppy eventually, and you'll be prepared when he does. That preparation became almost meditative. I maintained a secure digital folder documenting every piece of evidence: Brandon's surveillance footage, Barbara's statement about double billing, screenshots of suspicious transactions from my time at Wilson Builders. I created a timeline of events, regularly updated with rumors that reached me through industry contacts. Those rumors painted a concerning picture. Wilson Builders had apparently lost several major clients. Their once sterling reputation for reliability was slipping. Nathan had been spotted arguing with suppliers about late payments. Dad was seen less frequently at work sites, leading to speculation about his health. I absorbed this information with complicated emotions. Part of me, a small, wounded part one wasn't proud of, felt vindicated. Their success, without me, was proving unsustainable. Yet a larger part ached knowing the company Mom had loved, that Dad had built from nothing, was suffering. On the second anniversary of my exile, I took a personal day from work and hiked to Minnehaha Falls, Mom's favorite spot in the city. Sitting beside the rushing water, I finally confronted the question I'd been avoiding. If Dad called tomorrow, apologizing and asking me to return, would I go? The answer surprised me. 2 years ago, I would have run back instantly, desperate for his approval and my old life. Now I wasn't sure. I'd built something valuable from the ashes: independence, resilience, self-respect. Any reconciliation would require acknowledgement of the harm done and significant changes to our family dynamic. I'd forgiven Dad in my heart. His grief over Mom had left him vulnerable to manipulation, and Nathan had exploited that masterfully. But forgiveness didn't mean allowing myself to be hurt again. Any path forward would need to be on new terms, with boundaries firmly in place. That evening, back home with a glass of wine, I wrote 2 letters I never intended to send. One to Dad, expressing my enduring love despite everything, my grief over our estrangement, and my hope that someday he would see the truth. The second to Nathan, releasing the anger that had poisoned my early months of exile and acknowledging that whatever emptiness drove him to destroy me was punishment enough. Writing those letters was cathartic, the final step in accepting that my healing couldn't depend on their recognition of wrongdoing. I was whole without their validation. I was Megan Wilson, not defined by what had been taken from me, but by what I'd built afterward. I burned both letters in my kitchen sink, watching the flames consume words that had weighed on my heart for too long. Whatever happened next, I was ready. The universe has a peculiar sense of timing. The very next morning, I received an anonymous email with a link to a recent article in the Minneapolis Business Journal. The headline made my coffee mug slip from my fingers, shattering against the floor. Wilson Builders faces bankruptcy amid fraud allegations. The article detailed how Wilson Builders was under investigation for financial irregularities, including misappropriation of client funds and tax discrepancies spanning 3 years. Nathan was mentioned by name as the company's financial manager, the position he'd apparently assumed after orchestrating my removal. The reporter noted that Richard Wilson had recently suffered a heart attack, leaving day-to-day operations entirely in his son's hands. For several minutes, I sat motionless among the scattered ceramic shards and cooling coffee, my mind racing through implications. According to the article, the missing funds totaled over $250,000, far more than the $39,000 I'd been accused of stealing. Nathan hadn't stopped after framing me. He'd escalated, growing bolder with each successful theft. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Unknown number. Hello. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Megan. The voice was familiar yet strange. Nathan, but hollowed out, stripped of the confidence that had always characterized him. I need to talk to you. 3 years of silence, and now this. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done, just the implicit assumption that I would listen because he needed something. Why would I talk to you? I kept my tone neutral, giving away nothing. It's Dad. A pause. He's in the hospital. Heart attack. Serious one. Another pause. And the business. We're in trouble. Big trouble. I'm aware of the business situation. It's in the papers. Then you know why I'm calling. Desperation edged into his voice. You're the only one who can fix this. The audacity was breathtaking. After destroying my life, he expected me to rescue him from the consequences of his actions. Give me one good reason why I should help you, Nathan. Not for me, he replied quickly. For Dad. He knows, Megan. He knows what I did to you. My heart stuttered. When? 6 months after you left. Found discrepancies I couldn't explain away. He's been different since then. Withdrawn. The heart attack happened right after the IRS contacted us about an audit. The revelation that Dad had discovered the truth yet never reached out to me opened a fresh wound. He'd known for over 2 years that I was innocent, yet his pride or shame had kept him silent. I need time to think, I finally said. I'll call you back. I spent the next hour on the phone with Jessica, discussing legal implications and options. Then I called Dr. Wilson for an emergency session. By evening, I had a decision and a plan. I met Nathan at a neutral location, a quiet corner table at a downtown restaurant. He looked terrible, his designer clothes rumpled, dark circles shadowing his eyes. His usual confident posture collapsed into something almost unrecognizable. "Thank you for coming," he began, his rehearsed humility transparent. "Let's be clear," I interrupted. "I'm here to listen, not to help." "Not yet." What followed was Nathan's version of an apology, a self-serving narrative about jealousy, opportunity, and things spiraling out of control. He admitted framing me but minimized his intent, portraying it as a momentary lapse rather than the calculated destruction it had been. "I never meant for it to go this far," he insisted. "I just wanted Dad to appreciate me for once." "And the $250,000? Was that also for Dad's appreciation?" He flinched. "That came later. After you were gone, I had access to everything. No oversight. It was too easy." "Where's the money, Nathan?" His gaze dropped to the table. "Gone. Bad investments. Some gambling. Living beyond my means." The company faced not just bankruptcy, but potential criminal charges. Dad was recovering slowly, refusing to see Nathan since discovering the extent of his theft. The family legacy that had sustained us after Mom's death was imploding. "I need your help," Nathan concluded. "Your financial expertise. Your clean reputation. If you come back, maybe we can save something from this mess." "And what do I get?" I asked, my voice steady. "Your job back. Your place in the family. Dad wants to see you." "No." I cut him off. "Those aren't gifts you can offer me. You took them unlawfully. They're already mine by right." His face fell. "Then what do you want?" "Justice," I said simply. "And protection." 3 days later, I walked into Minneapolis General Hospital, my heart pounding as I approached Dad's room. He was asleep, smaller somehow, tubes and monitors surrounding him like a technological cocoon. I almost turned to leave when his eyes opened, focusing slowly on my face. "Megan." His voice cracked. "You're really here?" "I'm here," I confirmed, keeping my distance. "I'm so sorry." Tears welled in his eyes. "What I did to you, there's no excuse. Why didn't you call me when you found out the truth?" The question had burned in me since Nathan's revelation. He looked away. "Shame. Cowardice. How could I face you after what I'd done? Throwing my own daughter out, choosing Nathan's lies over your lifetime of honesty." His voice broke. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "No," I agreed quietly. "You don't. But relationships aren't about deserving. They're about choosing to love anyway." We talked for hours, painful, necessary conversation about trust betrayed and the long road to rebuilding it. He revealed that he discovered Nathan's theft while reviewing old transactions, finding the same patterns I'd begun noticing before my exile. Rather than confront Nathan immediately, he'd secretly investigated, uncovering the full scope of the deception. "By then, you'd disappeared," he explained. "Changed your number, moved. None of your old friends knew where to find you. You could have tried harder," I pointed out. "I wasn't hiding." He nodded, accepting the truth of this. "Fear makes cowards of us all. I was afraid you'd never forgive me." That fear kept me paralyzed until my heart literally gave out. Before leaving, I outlined my conditions for helping salvage the business. Nathan would sign a notarized confession to framing me and embezzling company funds. He would perform community service and undergo financial counseling. Most importantly, I would become majority shareholder of Wilson Builders, with final authority on all decisions. "You're not asking for him to face criminal charges?" Dad seemed surprised. "That would destroy the company completely," I explained. "This way, there's a chance to rebuild while ensuring he faces consequences." Dad agreed immediately. Nathan, when presented with the terms, exploded in outrage before reality set in. My way offered his only chance to avoid prison. He signed with poor grace, his signature an angry scrawl across the document Jessica had prepared. The following Monday, I walked into Wilson Builders for the first time in 3 years. The silence that fell as I crossed the lobby was deafening. Brandon, still manning security, broke the tension with a warm welcome back, Ms. Wilson. Others followed his lead, some genuinely pleased to see me, others simply sensing which way the wind now blew. The work ahead was monumental. Years of Nathan's financial mismanagement had left the company in critical condition. Clients needed reassuring, suppliers required payment plans, employees deserved transparent leadership. I worked 18-hour days, sleeping on the office couch when necessary, determined to save what could be saved. Dad recovered slowly, returning to work part-time after 6 weeks. Our relationship followed a similar healing trajectory, tentative at first, gaining strength through shared purpose and honest communication. He deferred to my judgment on business matters, a reversal of our previous dynamic that spoke volumes about his respect for the woman I'd become in exile. Nathan worked in the warehouse, starting at the bottom rung under strict supervision. His resentment was palpable, but contained by the knowledge that his freedom depended on compliance. We spoke only when necessary, professional interactions devoid of familial warmth. Perhaps someday that would change, but I wouldn't force forgiveness that hadn't yet grown naturally. Family therapy became a weekly fixture, uncomfortable but essential. Dr. Reeves specialized in family trauma and pulled no punches, calling out unhealthy patterns and demanding accountability. These sessions were often more exhausting than the most challenging workdays, but they laid foundations for healthier relationships. 6 months after my return, Wilson Builders showed its first quarterly profit since my departure. Small, but significant proof that recovery was possible. A year later, we'd retained 80% of our clients and added several new ones, drawn by our renewed reputation for transparency and reliability. The journey from victim to victor wasn't a straight line. I still experienced moments of anger, lingering trust issues, occasional nightmares about that day of exile. But these moments no longer defined me. They were echoes of old pain, not fresh wounds. What I learned through this crucible of betrayal and redemption shaped my approach to every relationship and decision that followed. I discovered that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. It's possible to release bitterness while maintaining boundaries. I learned that family can be both our greatest vulnerability and our most profound strength, depending on how we navigate those connections. Most importantly, I discovered my own resilience, the unshakable core that remained when everything external was stripped away. That knowledge cannot be taken, regardless of what material or relational losses might come in the future. Today, Wilson Builders thrives under joint leadership, Dad as the public face clients trust, me as the strategic and financial director who ensures that trust is warranted. Nathan continues his redemption journey, showing gradual improvement though our relationship remains professionally cordial rather than warmly familial. My chosen family, Jessica, Marco, Zoe, and others who stood by me during the darkness, remain central to my life, reminders that sometimes the most authentic connections form after our most significant losses. I've even begun dating someone who respects my independence and admires my strength rather than being threatened by it. If you're facing betrayal by those who should protect you, know this: your worth isn't determined by others' treatment of you. The path forward may look impossible from where you stand, but each small step creates possibility where none existed before. Build your life brick by brick, surround yourself with people who recognize your truth, and trust that even shattered hearts can rebuild into something stronger at the broken places. Have you experienced family betrayal that forced you to rebuild? Did you choose forgiveness, boundaries, or both? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Together, we create a community of survivors becoming thrivers, turning our deepest wounds into wisdom that lights the way for others. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the family we choose becomes our greatest blessing.